Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Committee on Veterans and Legal Affairs. I hope everybody had a nice weekend. We've got a quorum present, and we're assembled here electronically to invite public comment on legislation pending before us today. Before we get started, we'll have the committee members introduce themselves. We'll begin with House Chairman Chiazzo.
Good morning, everybody. Chris Chiazzo, House District 28, representing beautiful West Scarborough.
Senator Farron.
Good morning, folks. My name is Brad Farron. I live in Norwich Walk and represent Senate District 3, which is the majority of Somerset County.
Representative Kinney.
Good morning, I'm Mary Ann Kinney. I represent House District 99, 9 towns in Western Waldo County.
Representative Tuttle.
Representative John Tuttle from District 18, part of Sanford, primarily Sanford's east side, Mr. Chair.
Right. Representative Wood.
Good morning, I'm Barb Wood and I represent House District 38, which is the western end of the peninsula in Portland.
Okay. Representative Doloff.
Good morning, Representative Jill Sandola, District 115, which takes in Roxbury, Rumford, Milton Township, Woodstock.
Okay. Representative Supika.
Good morning, I'm Laura Supika and I represent District 126, a portion of Bangor.
Representative Riley.
Hi, Representative Riley. I represent House District 34, which is part of Westbrook.
Representative McCrate.
Good morning. I'm Jay McCrate, representing Harpswell, West Bath, and part of Brunswick in the House. And thank you to our clerk for making sure we have the Zoom link.
Representative Corey.
Good morning. I'm Patrick Corey. I represent House District 25, which is part of Wyndham.
Great. And with us, as always, we have our committee clerk, Karen Montel. And today we have our committee analyst, Sam Prower, for the veterans bills, I believe. And we also have our committee analyst, Janet Stocco. So before we get started, we'll just cover a few of the ground rules for an electronic committee meeting. Oh, Chairman Chiazzo, sorry.
I'm sorry, and you are?
Oh, thank you for the reminder. My name's Louis Lucchini. I represent most of Hancock County in the Senate. I always forget that part. So just so everybody knows, this meeting's currently being live streamed on the committee's YouTube channel. This means that anyone who's a participant in the meeting via Zoom can be seen and also heard if your microphone is unmuted. People in the Zoom meeting under the attendees list who are waiting to testify won't be seen or heard until they're called upon to speak. As we upgrade you into the panel, just as a note, it may look like you're being dropped. You may lose audio for a second, but once you're up here, you'll be able to unmute yourself and turn your camera on and submit your testimony. As always, the audio for this meeting is being live streamed on the legislature's website. And if you've submitted written testimony, that's available on the legislature's website, and that's where all of us can see it as well. Regarding the chat function, if you're on the Zoom meeting, this is for technical assistance only. It's not a place to do any substantive work. So for our bills today, we'll begin with the sponsors, followed by those who registered to testify today. And we usually move through the bills with those in favor, followed by those in opposition. And lastly, those who are neither for nor against. For members of the public who are on today and wish to testify, just as a reminder, when you're called upon, please state your name, your place of residence, and the organization you represent, if any. Also, our committee uses a 3-minute time clock, so please tailor your remarks accordingly. So just so the public and bill sponsors are aware of the order we're going to go today, we're going to start with LD 827, an act to help veterans access jobs, education, and housing. We'll go to LD 619 and then LD 61111, or sorry, LD 1111. And those will be the first 3 bills. And then the second block of bills that we have We'll go in order as advertised, which is LD 1061, LD 1125, LD 1126, and finally 1155. So that'll be the order that we follow. So with that, we'll get ready to open the public hearing on LD 827, which is an act to help veterans access jobs, education, and housing. And we will recognize the bill's sponsor, Senator Rafferty. Welcome.
Good morning and welcome.
Welcome, Senator.
Good morning and thank you very much. Hope everyone had a great weekend. And thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. Senator Lucchini, Representative Chiarzo, and distinguished members of the Veterans and Legal Affairs Committee, I am Joe Rafferty, and I proudly represent all the people of Senate District 34 in the Maine Senate, and I'm here to present LD 827, an act to help veterans access jobs, education, and housing. I'd like to start out by mentioning that this bill is split into three parts, Part A, Part B, and Part C. Part A focuses on licensing and certifications for veterans and their family members. From the time that this legislation was drafted to now, this aspect of the bill has been taken care of by Senator Curry's LD 374, an act to allow veterans, active duty service members, and their spouses to apply for temporary occupational licenses and certifications. Therefore, I'd like to turn the focus of your attention to parts B and C, as they are still critically important. Part B of this bill helps veterans access post-secondary education in the state by designating liaisons to provide academic counseling and benefit assistance to students who are members of the United States Armed Forces within the University of Maine system, the Maine Community College system, and the Maine Maritime Academy. Additionally, this bill designates that each school within these systems provides a specific location where these students may congregate to study and to provide support to their peers and receive assistance from the liaison. Part C of this bill helps veterans access housing by requiring the Department of Health and Human Services, in coordination with the Director of the Maine Bureau of Veterans Services within the Department of Defense, Veterans and Emergency Management, to develop a method of identifying veterans who are homeless and eligible for temporary housing assistance under the Bridging Rental Assistance Program. I think we can all agree that providing these resources to Maine veterans and active duty service members is a small token for the gratitude that we could provide for them, given all they have done and continue to do for us. Our communities and our country, investing in their education by providing shared workspaces for them and their peers, will strengthen their education and our state school systems overall. Lastly, I find it unacceptable that any veteran could be in a situation of having no roof over their head. While I understand this is a complex issue, Part C of this bill provides a path for us to do more to help fix this problem. I thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I again realize over the weekend I've spoke with a number of people, and I understand many of these services are in place and are being done by different entities. However, this bill will ensure the support continues regardless of any potential changes down the road. Thank you very much for your time, and I'd answer any questions I could.
Great. Thank you, Senator Rafferty.
Thank
Any
you.
questions? Any questions from the committee at this time? Representative Dolph.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was trying to find my button. What is the fiscal note on this bill?
I don't think that
Doesn't look like it's been determined yet.
I
Based
told, it has not been, yes, it has not been, to the best of my knowledge, has not been
Yeah, I
determined.
couldn't find it. Thank you.
And again, a lot of these services are being done. I think you'll hear from a couple of those folks that provide these following my testimony. There's a fellow from the director of the Maine Bureau of Veteran Services, and very informative in terms of information. If it's there, I just want to ensure that it continues regardless of the direction, whether it's that service or that bureau or that individual. I mean, a lot of the work is being done. I don't know that there is legislature that demands that work continue.
Senator Farren?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Senator Rafferty. I think one of the things, and we'll hear that as we go through, but I do know that at many of the University of Maine systems, that they have that outreach and that liaison and the officer that we do that. And I also know on the homeless piece, this committee has spent quite a bit of time working with Director Richmond and the folks on that front from the homeless coordinator position that was created in statute and that we've talked about. So I think that these are good conversations that we'll have through this, and hopefully we can address, your concerns or the issues you raised, that we have dotted our I's and crossed our T's.
Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate that.
Okay, any other questions from the committee at this time? Seeing none, thank you, Senator.
Thank you, sir, and thank you all for your work. Have a great day.
Great, you too. Okay, next we'll move to those who have registered to testify today. So we'll begin with Ann Head. She'll be followed by Ben Yardley and Timothy Terranova. So welcome, Commissioner Head. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Senator Lucchini. I appreciate Senator Rafferty's comments on Part A of the bill. I'm not going to read my testimony. I just wanted to say that, ironically, another bill, Senator Curry's bill in the IDEA Committee, covers some of the same sections that Senator Rafferty's bill covers. And we've spent a lot of time looking at what needs to happen in Section 8011 of the department's enabling statute. So I was wondering if Senator Rafferty would consider deleting that part of Part A that affects licensing boards in the Department of Professional and Financial Regulation. So we had a good discussion over the weekend, and Senator Curry's bill is at the end of the committee process and is just waiting for language review. So we're going to just wait and see what happens with that bill, and hopefully I can come back to this committee and report that that bill is proceeding to the floor. And as soon as that happens, I'm going to circle back with Senator Rafferty to make sure he is okay with deleting those sections of Part A that would have affected the licensing boards in the Department of Professional and Financial Regulation. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you all. I recognize some faces, and I look forward to working with you on this bill and Senator Curry's bill. Thank you very much. I'd be happy to answer questions.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Head. I know sometimes bills get referenced to a couple different committees, and I double with ideas, so I've kind of watched that bill unfold as well. So any questions for the commissioner at this time? Great, seeing none, thank you for testifying today.
Thank you very much to the committee.
Okay, next we have Ben Yardley, followed by Timothy Terranova. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you, Senator Lucchini, Representative Caiazzo, and members of the Committee on Veterans and Legal Affairs. I am Ben Yardley. I'm senior attorney at the Maine Bureau of Insurance. We have also filed testimony, which I won't read, and I will just offer a few comments about Part A of the bill. We support the bill in concept, but we think it will have unintended consequences when applied to the Bureau of Insurance. The Bureau licenses insurance producers, which are popularly known as agents. And we also license insurance adjusters and consultants. And as you know, the bill would require the Bureau to offer a temporary license to veterans and their spouses so that they can obtain a permanent license in Maine. We do this very quickly, offering non-resident licenses. It takes about 1 to 4 business days. And the Bureau participates in a nationwide system of reciprocal licensing. So what we do for non-resident producers in Maine is done for Maine residents who wish to obtain non-resident licensure elsewhere. We get into the reciprocal licensing in our testimony. This is why we don't have a temporary license program. Doing it under the temporary license would actually take more time, both for the applicant and the Bureau, because licenses on a temporary basis are not accepted electronically. So the non-resident would have to send in a paper application, and we handle it in a manual basis, and this just takes a lot longer to do. We would, ironically, if the bill were to become law without carving out the Bureau and other DPFR agencies, we'd be in the position of creating an administrative process that we hope nobody would use. I'm wrapping it right up. So that's it. Happy to answer questions, and I will be at the work session. I'll give you back 8 seconds.
Great. Thank you. Any questions at this time from committee members? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Okay, next on our list is Timothy Terranova, and he'll be followed by Dave Richmond.
Good morning and thank you. Good morning, Senator Lucchini, Representative Caiazzo, and members of the committee. My name is Tim Terranova, and I am the Assistant Executive Director of the Board of Licensure and Medicine. Given Senator Rafferty's comments and Commissioner Head's comments, I won't go through my testimony. Our concerns are with Part A, which has been worked through the IDEA Committee. And so I think that those concerns have been answered. I will just let you know that the board is part of the Interstate Medical Licensure Compact. So we license physicians from 32 other jurisdictions within 72 hours. As well as we have a separate emergency license where people who have a job can get licensed within 48 hours if they need to, if the permanent process is taking too long. But other than that, I will not hold up this committee. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, and I can also be present at the work session.
Thank you, Mr. Terranova. Any questions from members of the committee at this time? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony today.
Thank you.
Great. And next up, we have Director Richmond from Bureau of Veteran Services. Welcome.
Good morning, Senator Lucchini, Representative Caiazzo, and honorable members of the Veterans and Legal Affairs Committee. My name is David Richmond. I'm the Director of Maine Bureau of Veteran Services. I'm here today to testify neither for nor against LD 827, an act to help veterans access jobs, education, and housing. Maine veterans receive a host of benefits and services due to cross-agency collaboration throughout the state. The bill before you today is a great example of how these partnerships could work, and in many cases, how they already work for the benefit of our veteran population. I'm going to omit the section of my testimony that deals with Part A, although it's still on record as I submitted it. In addition to bolstering employment opportunities, we also serve as a conduit for veterans to access their educational benefits. The University of Maine system, Maine Community College System, and Maine Maritime Academy remain one of the Bureau's largest partners. These institutions provide education benefits to veterans and their dependents who meet qualifying criteria, meaning they qualify for the Veterans Dependent Educational Benefit, or VDEB. VDEB provides 100% waiver of tuition and all mandatory fees for spouses and dependents of veterans who have a disability rating of 100% permanent and total with the VA, or who were killed in action or died as a result of a service-related injury. VDEB is available to those veterans who have resided in Maine for 5 years immediately preceding the application for aid and who continue to reside in Maine throughout the duration of the benefit. Our agency has a valuable relationship with the certifying officials of each of the University of Maine and community colleges campuses. Because of this partnership, our qualifying veterans reap the benefit of 100% tuition waiver and all mandatory fees for each of their dependents. The University of Maine system has also developed a student military and mobilization and activation policy to support students called to duty in order to best accommodate students affected by deployment and or training. The University of Maine system, MCCS, and MMA have always been tireless advocates for our veterans, and we would like to thank them for their continued commitment. Lastly, our agency is statutorily required to provide veterans homeless prevention coordination, and we do so by working alongside our partnering agencies to reduce the number of homeless veterans across the state. Our homeless veteran coordinator works in the community to maximize all resources available to assist veterans with an emergent and critical need. A lack of affordable housing and a spike in veteran homelessness over this last year have created a few more challenges. However, programs like Shelter Plus Care and the Bridging Rental Assistance Program have been helpful to case managers working within this particular population of veterans. The Bureau will assist in any way we can to ensure our veterans are adequately served and connected with the best resources available across the state. I thank you for hearing my testimony on this bill, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you, Director Richmond.
Also giving 8 seconds back.
Representative Wood.
Thank you, Chair Lucchini. Director Richmond, I have a question, and I noticed it in Section A, which I know is no longer part of what we're talking about, but just in general, that section specifically says somebody with an honorable discharge. And I just wondered, going back to the bill that I brought forward and was passed by this committee about service members who are discharged with a less than honorable discharge solely because of their sexual orientation or gender identity. How does that bill that we've passed come into play when we see something like this?
So in regards to the to LD 173,
right.
Representative Wood, that I believe would fall under one of the benefits that we administer at the state, so that anyone that was upgraded would be eligible for state benefits.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would defer to Commissioner Head on the changes they made to LD 374, but I believe they also considered general under honorable conditions.
Okay.
I defer to her for the accuracy of that.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, and we'll watch that bill as it makes its way through the IDEA committee. Any other questions for Director Richmond at this time? Okay, seeing none, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, so that concludes our list of people who've registered to testify on this bill. So with that, I'll close the public hearing on LD 827, and we'll schedule a work session in the weeks ahead. Okay, so I will open the public hearing on LD 619, which is an act to allow Christine Pratt to be buried at the Southern Maine Veterans Cemetery. And the bill sponsor will recognize is Representative Tuttle. Welcome. And Representative Tuttle, yep, thanks.
Well, Louis, you'll have me trained yet. I don't know how many times, but Senator Lucchini and Representative Chiazzo and fellow members of the Veterans and Legal Affairs Committee. As you know, I am Representative John Tuttle from District 18 in Sanford, and I am the sponsor of LD 16 or 619, an act to allow Christine Pratt to be buried at the Southern Maine Veterans Cemetery. Mr. Chairman, many times in life, the people that do all the work aren't recognized for the fine work they do. If it wasn't for Christine Pratt, there wouldn't be a Southern Maine Veterans Cemetery in Springfield. This is one of the most important pieces of legislation I've sponsored during my 30 years as a Maine state legislator. And I'm asking this committee's help in doing the right thing, not only for Christine Pratt, but for all the veterans who are buried at the Springfield Cemetery in Southern Maine. This bill, as the chairman has says, allows Christine Pratt, who has served as the executive secretary of the Southern Maine Veterans Cemetery, to be buried at the Southern Maine Cemetery in Springfield. I have received about 50 letters and about, I would say, close to 100 calls of support on this bill. There are a few things in life where a legislator can be measured by their success or failure in life. And this legislation is that for me. I feel that strongly about it. I'd like to summarize the bill in 3 letters that I've submitted to the committee last Friday. The first is from Frank Soares, the former director of Maine Veteran Services. It says, "Dear Representative Tuttle John, for our recent discussion about the construction of the Maine Cemetery in Springfield, I'd like to share a story with you. During Governor Angus King's administration, I served as the state's director of the Maine Bureau of Veteran Services. One of my first duties was to develop a plan to serve the cemetery needs of the families of aging World War II veterans. The Augusta Cemetery was almost full, while Northern and Southern Maine had no cemeteries at all. The federal cemetery in Togus was full and closed. Thus, through legislative efforts, we founded a new cemetery in Augusta and a generous donation of land to the cemetery in Northern Maine. But these had construction funds funded by the USDVA. Through these efforts, we desperately needed the state, but still was short of a cemetery in Southern Maine. Families in that area were forced to travel to Augusta or to a VA facility in Cape Cod. After trying numerous ideas to acquire land in the area, I generally was concerned the Bureau would lose those funds promised to the area. In a nutshell, I had run out of ideas. During that time, I was conducting periodic visits to my field offices, including Springfield, There, at the end of my visit, I expressed my concern to the staff there. Christine Pratt, always positive and enthusiastic, asked if she could try and find something. I encouraged her to do that. Literally within days, she had names and location for possible cemeteries. Eventually, through efforts, one became the current Springville Sanford Cemetery. John, as we discussed, this letter will be my testimony for your LD, allowing Christine Pratt to be buried at the Springville Veterans Cemetery. The law only allows the veterans to be buried there, but I've communicated, Mr. Chairman, with Dave Richmond, and I've communicated with the legislative delegation officers, and they promised to help us in resolving this issue. However, as Frank says, I believe this case should be the exception. Just as Arlington National Cemetery allows exceptional civilians to be buried there, the same should be true in this case. Without her effort, there would be no Southern Maine veteran cemeteries. Mr. Chair, I have a few other letters, but in, I think, brevity, I think the folks of the committee know where I'm coming from. I really think that it is important to all the veterans in the state, particularly those like my own family who were buried at the veteran cemeteries in Springville, that we allow Christine Pratt to be buried. It is the right thing to do, and I'm asking the committee support in this effort, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Tuttle. Any questions from the committee at this time? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony, Representative Tuttle.
Well, Louis, I kept it under 10 minutes. I promised Representative Chiazzo I'd do that.
He's a stickler. Okay, so that so we'll move to the testimony portion of the hearing, and we have Director Richmond signed up to testify. Welcome, Director.
Good morning again. So before I begin, I did want to mention that I did talk with Representative Tuttle about this. And at first I had hoped that we could be neither for nor against it. And I told him I would check with the state cemetery grants authorities, and I have. And the resulting testimony is unfortunately against. So I'll be happy to explain it as I read it. Senator Lucchini, Representative Chiazzo, and honorable members of the Veterans and Legal Affairs Committee. My name is David Richmond. I'm the director of the Maine Bureau of Veteran Services, and I'm here today to testify against LD 619. Ms. Pratt has made an enormous contributions to the state through her service to the veterans and their families for more than 20 years as a dedicated employee of the state of Maine. She continues to serve her state and her community in her position at the Bureau, and the work she does is critical to our success. I also had the pleasure of working beside her during the feasibility study, design, development, construction, and then dedication of the Southern Maine Veteran Cemetery. And without her hard work and dedication, the construction of the Veteran Cemetery in Springville may never have happened. The Maine Veteran Cemetery System provides memorial services to veterans and their eligible dependents in accordance with the eligibility standards established by the National Cemetery Administration, or NCA, a division of the Department of Veterans Affairs. These 4 state cemeteries were designed and constructed in whole or in part with federal grant funds. And as a condition of accepting these grants, the Bureau agreed to operate the cemeteries principally in compliance with the NCA standards of maintenance and eligibility. Cemeteries not in compliance are at risk of having to return such grant funding. I did reach out to the Undersecretary of Memorial Affairs through the State Cemetery Grants Program to determine whether states were able to make exceptions to eligibility without risk of being uncompliant with our agreement. I found that an exception like this would certainly be a departure from our agreement and would likely result in a financial liability that equates to roughly $40 million in construction and maintenance grants. Beyond the policy considerations, we must also consider establishing a state precedent on allowing certain exceptions and what that may mean for cemeteries in the future. There were many others who also played a large part in project development at our cemeteries. One who is not buried there has a road named after her. There may be other appropriate ways to recognize the contributions of Miss Pratt, such as a cemetery road naming or a memorial stone located at the cemetery, or a dedication plaque, to name a few. I thank you for taking the time to hear this testimony on this important topic, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Director Richmond. Any questions from committee members at this time? Okay. Seeing none, thank you for testimony. And that concludes the list of people who've registered to sign up today for LD 619. So with that, I will close the public hearing on LD 619. And I'll turn it over to House Chairman Chiazzo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We will now open the public hearing on LD 1111, which is an act to update the statutes governing membership of the Board of Trustees to the Maine Veterans Home. And I will recognize the bill's lead sponsor, Senator Lucchini.
Great, thank you, Chairman Chiazzo, members of the Veterans and Legal Affairs Committee. My name is Louis Lucchini. I represent Senate District 7, which is most of Hancock County. And I'm here this morning to present LD 1111. Resolve an act to update the statutes governing membership of the Board of Trustees of the Maine Veterans Homes. So this bill was brought to me over the interim by the Maine Veterans Homes, which, as this committee is familiar with, they operate 6 facilities in Maine. They do truly amazing work taking care of our elderly veterans. So this bill before us, LD 1111, makes changes to the makeup of the Board of Trustees, as stated in the title. The makeup of the board is outlined in statute, so changes must be done through the legislative process. And so, as the CEO, Kelly Cash, can explain far better than I can, last summer, the Maine Veterans Homes Board of Trustees discussed this issue, the makeup of the board, and voted unanimously to submit these proposed changes to the legislature. And that's what created this bill, and I'm submitting it on their behalf. So among the changes made, the bill removes the requirement that a board member be a veteran. It specifies that 3 members come from veteran service organizations, and removes the requirement that the CEO be a veteran. It also does some technical changes along with that part of the bill. So current CEO, as I said, Colonel Cash, can explain the rationale better than me. However, the intention is to seek a broad and diverse range of professional experience on the board and to expand the pool of applicants. I think much like a corporate board, you want members with diverse backgrounds, whether it's financial services, technology, or really importantly in this case, experience in the medical fields. But particularly in navigating the bureaucracy of healthcare. Operating long-term or short-term care facilities is extremely difficult, as our legislatures faced, as well as those in DC, whether it's about reimbursement rates, federal stipends, things of that sort. So it does still require that a majority of board members be honorably discharged veterans, and it still requires a geographic distribution of its members. As I stated kind of earlier, the job of running a healthcare facility of this sort is extremely complex, and it gets more and more every day with the various regulations that they have to deal with. And these changes brought forward by the board reflect the need for an experienced and broad range of professionals on their board to help this organization run smoothly and deal with some of the financial difficulties that have been faced. So with that, I'll conclude my testimony and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Senator Lucchini. Any questions for the senator from the committee? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Senator. We have Colonel Cash. up now. He's next in to testify. So Colonel, when you're ready, the floor is yours, sir.
Oh, thank you very much. Senator Lucchini, Representative Chiazzo, and distinguished members of the committee. Again, my name is Kelly Cash, and I'm the CEO of the Maine Veterans Homes. I am testifying in support of LD 1111. You should already have my written testimony. As Senator Lucchini said, MVH functions as an independent nonprofit organization. We operate 6 facilities, employ 1,000 staff, and have an annual operating budget of nearly $100 million. Normally, we care for approximately 600 veterans daily, less so during the pandemic. My point here is that MVH is a large, independent, and complex organization. The goal of the proposed legislation is to provide for a more diverse and effective governing body to meet the enormous challenges of providing long-term care for our veterans, now and in the future. Strategic planning, business acumen, and executive leadership experience are needed more than ever to navigate the evolving healthcare environment and increasing financial pressures. There are 2 major changes in the proposed bill. First, it would allow the appointment of non-veterans to the board. This would give the governor more flexibility in appointing candidates to the board. It would also remove a designated number of seats for veteran service organizations. These VSOs would still have a presence on the board, and in fact, the statute specifically calls for candidates to be submitted from the VSOs for the governor's consideration. The intent of this change is to provide flexibility when needed, to provide for a diverse, qualified, and capable board to give the strategic direction and oversight that is necessary to lead the homes. To that end, it opens up opportunities to seek the best candidates rather than limits them. The second major change is to remove the requirement that the CEO be a veteran. And in fact, many, if not most, of my counterparts in state veterans homes across the nation are not veterans. As a healthcare professionals, they are better prepared to administer the homes than a veteran without long-term care experience. The intent of this change is also to provide flexibility when needed. While a veteran may be seemingly ideal, there is no guarantee that we can find a veteran or that he or she will be the best person for the position. I was selected among 3 candidates. Neither of the 2 other final candidates had any healthcare experience. Again, this change is about expanding opportunities rather than limiting choices. Thank you for your attention and consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Colonel Cash. Any questions for the Colonel? Senator Farron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Colonel. As you know, we've talked a little bit back and forth, and I'm sure some of the other members have received some emails this weekend from VFW members and VSOs and the likes. And just so we can be real clear, make sure I wrap the head around is specifically the issues that I heard, first of all, was the makeup of the board members. And with this change, the majority of the board members still need to remain to be from the VSOs and veterans. Is that correct, sir?
Yeah, absolutely. The board would remain majority veteran. And in fact, I anticipate that we're probably looking at a non-veteran being appointed by exception if we have a specific need. And I can give you an example. As you know, we're building a new home in Augusta, which will be opening later this year. And we actually specifically sought for somebody who had experience with large scale projects. And we were fortunate to find a veteran, an Emil Genest, who led the construction of new schools in District 22. And those are the types of folks we're looking at. But if we hadn't been able to find a veteran, it would have been nice to be able to have the option to go for a non-veteran. And there are other talents, or I should say experiences, that we might specifically see in certain situations.
Okay, thank you, sir. Follow up, Mr. Chair.
You go ahead, Senator.
Okay, and then specifically about the CEO position, it's my understanding that even if we remove that requirement that it had to be a honorably discharged veteran, that in the hiring process and the recommendation process, that preference is given to veterans in the hiring process. Is that correct, Colonel?
That is correct, and that's a standard practice at the Maine Veterans Homes for all of our positions.
So what, again, just kind of talking this through a little bit and making sure I can respond back to, I got my folks up in the Madison Post up here and around that I received some of the emails from. Is there a way, I know in the language of the bill, it says, you know, that taking away that requirement, but is there still a way to highlight that veterans are given that preference? And I might talk to the bill sponsor about that somehow or whatever, just so part of that language is in there so everybody knows that that is part of the hiring process.
I mean, that's a good question. I think it's unnecessary since it's already part of our practice, and we've been doing that. Again, let's keep in mind that the board is charged with hiring the CEO, and the board is going to do what it feels is the right thing for the organization. And so they're going to be very, I think, keen and intent on finding the veteran first, and then looking for other candidates. So I don't know that it's necessary.
Thank you, Colonel. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Farren. Colonel Cash, and I apologize, I don't know much about the oversight or the corporate governance of the Veterans Home. I probably should know that better. How often does the CEO interact with the board? Do you have quarterly meetings, biannual, annual?
Yeah, we right now, and in fact, this legislation is looking at changing it from 6 to quarterly meetings. We also meet with them more frequently. For example, we try to do a strategic planning session every year. So we meet at least 4 times, or that's our intent, is to meet at least 4 times with them. In addition, I speak every other week. I have a standing call with the board chair.
Okay. So it's fair to say that it's a similar corporate governance. I mean, you report to the board of directors.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions for Colonel Cash while we have him? Okay, seeing none, thank you, Colonel. We appreciate your testimony this morning.
Thank you.
Up next, we'll recognize David Patch, and he will be followed by Jim Steele. Mr. Patch, when you're ready, sir.
Good morning, Senator Lutiti, Representative Piazza, members of the Committee on Veteran and Legal Affairs. My name is David Patch, retired Navy commander, multiple tour Vietnam veteran from Booth Bay Harbor. I'm here today representing myself. While I am a member of the American Legion, the Military Officers Association of America, Maine Veteran Coordinating Committee, and the Midcoast Veteran Council, my testimony does not reflect the position of any of those organizations. I would like to start my presentation by recognizing the current leadership of the Maine Veterans Home, CEO Kelly Cash, a retired Air Force colonel with a career history in the management of medical facilities. The Maine Veterans Home are gold standard in nursing homes across the country and has been demonstrated by their numerous awards. I would also commend the current leadership of the Maine Veteran Home trustees, all veterans I understand. When LD 1111 was first presented, it was largely met with skepticism or complete disagreement. Perhaps the adage of, if it ain't broken, don't fix it applies. Many in the veteran community frankly felt it was critically important that the leadership, both within the trustees and the CEO, needed to be veterans, as veterans would be the most passionate to be sure the best quality care facilities are provided our fellow veterans. At issue was, could you ensure the best possible qualifications for the job trustees or CEO could be met and still be a veteran? Are there enough U.S. veterans who could meet the high standards of the CEO and be willing to apply for the Maine Veteran Home position? Many felt there were. The concern would be that if there weren't qualified veterans, if you codify the requirement to be a veteran, you would sacrifice the highest qualification standards. LD 1111 only requires 6 of the 11 veteran trustees be veterans. However, all of the state veteran service organizations will be requested to submit nominations for the position of trustees. Other individuals may also be recommended for consideration. The trustees then select the best qualified candidate and submits the list to the governor. In other words, it's the trustees who essentially select the trustees to fill the vacancies and the CEO. It is important to know that this legislation requires 6 of the 11 trustees to be veterans, the majority. The trustees are the ones who hire the CEO and recommend the slate of candidates to fill the trustee vacancies. Knowing that, the final decision on who to hire as a CEO rests with veterans. So while many of my veteran colleagues may disagree with my position, I personally stand in support of LD 1111 and trust my fellow veterans and Maine Veteran Home trustees to make the right CEO hiring decisions. I thank you very much for this opportunity to testify in support of LD 1111.
Thank you, Commander Patch. Senator Farron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hey, David, thank you very much for coming in and testifying on this, because I think you and I might find ourselves in the same situation, position on this. So, but I think having the conversation and going through how it actually works, other than just looking at the language, makes a big difference. And really, really appreciate you coming and talking with us this morning.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you, Senator. Any other questions for Commander Patch while we have him? Seeing none, thank you, sir, for your testimony this morning.
Mr. Chairman, I saw the hand of Jim Batchelor. Did you?
I had a question in the chat. He hasn't responded yet, so we're going to continue through the order until he responds.
Okay.
Thank you, Representative Tuttle. Jim, you're up next, sir. Please, at your leisure.
Thank you. Good morning, all. I think Senator Farron, some of your questions may have precluded a little bit of my testimony, but you know me, I'm going to press ahead anyways, right? You got it. Senator Lucchini, Representative Chiazzo, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for this opportunity to make a statement in support of LD 1111. My name is Jim Settley. I'm from Orono. I'm a retired Navy captain and naval flight officer. I served for 27 years on active duty prior to my current service at the University of Maine. I currently serve as the executive director of the Graduate School of Policy and International Affairs and the undergraduate International Affairs program. I've also been an interim athletic director and chief of staff for former President Hunter. I obviously can't keep a job up here very long. But I'm a lifetime member of the Military Officers Association of America and a 20-year member of the American Legion. Most importantly, I've served on the MVH board since 2016 and as chairman since 2019. So I speak for the board today. In my time on the board, I've come to appreciate, incredibly so, the importance of the CEO having deep experience in healthcare leadership. I cannot imagine myself filling the role successfully without a healthcare background in work and knowledge. And in fact, this has come up in conversation with some Legion members and VSO members last week, saying, you know, if we can't find an applicant who has healthcare background, then we're just going to hire a veteran with great leadership experience. I think we're talking about that kind of person who, with my background, and I'm telling you, after watching this for 4 or 5 years now, there's no way that I could do it. Nor do I think it would be well served by somebody else like me. I can assure you that when the time comes and the board looks to recruit Kelly's successor, we will conduct a national search to find the most qualified candidate. All things being equal, or even close, the board will choose a veteran over a non-veteran. MVH already has a veteran preferences policy, as you heard Kelly state earlier, and it's our standard practice. We don't need to add veteran preference in the bill. Limiting the CEO position to veterans only is unnecessary and I think a bit short-sighted. What the proposed bill does, as written, is empower the MVH Board of Trustees, our group of 11 veterans, and they're all veterans right now, to make the best decision for our Maine veterans in hiring the CEO, whether veteran or not, who will most effectively serve the business and mission needs of the organization, and most importantly, as you all know, serve our veterans. Finally, please note that these changes were unanimously approved by the board, again, all veterans, including the VSO representatives. The board reached this decision after thinking about this over a number of years, believing it to be the best and surest way to provide for a diverse and effective governing body and executive leadership. Thank you for your time and attention. I'm happy to answer any questions at this point.
Thank you, Captain Settley. Good to see a little bit of Navy wisdom brought to the table. Senator Farron.
Navy wisdom. That's exactly what I was going to say, Mr. Chair.
Uh-oh. This could get contentious.
Not a bit. Jim, thanks, Captain, for being here. It's been a long time no see, and glad to know that you're doing great work for our veterans across the state, as well as all the students up there at the university system. So thank you very much.
Good to see you, my friend.
Any other questions from the committee for Captain Settley? Okay, seeing none, thank you, sir, for your testimony this morning.
Thank you all, and thanks for the work that you do every day. Much appreciated.
Thank you. That concludes the list of those in favor. I see James Batchelor is in the, he was in the attendee. Yeah, there he is. I will bring him in, and he will be next up to present his testimony. Mr. Batchelor, if you can hear us, if you're ready, you can begin when you're able, sir.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. We can hear you and see you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I think maybe I should have waited, but you didn't call my name, and I wanted to testify on behalf of the state of Maine in opposition to the bill. And I want to thank Senator Lucchini and Representative Cazzo. If you're trying to get me to say it right, my VA hearing aids sometimes don't clarify what you're saying. So, but I'm here to testify on behalf of the state commander, Michael Keith Davis, and the members of the organization and the auxiliary. And we strongly oppose LD 1111, an act to update the statute governing membership of the Board of Trustees of the Maine Veterans Home. I just need to stop for a moment. I got a voicemail, which I haven't listened to yet. My wife is just coming out of the recovery room across the street from John Tuttle's house. So I'm not going to read the whole testimony here, because what's in this testimony we've already heard. I just want to highlight the fact that the state of Maine Veterans of Foreign Wars members, as stated by some of your previous testimony, are very opposed to not having the veteran requirement for board membership. And also, they're very strong of not having the 5 largest organizations in the state of Maine to be able to have a mandatory seat at the table. And what I want to highlight is that they do a lot of volunteer services. They're not only veterans, but these are people who are in the community. They know what is going on in the homes because of the number of veterans that volunteer and coordinate it with their state organizations. The understanding about the veterans requirement necessary for the CEO, we do understand that sometimes you might not find someone as well as Kelly Cash to fit it. And I've worked with Kelly for many years, so we know each other very well. And but we would definitely like to have that preference, veterans preference, and also everything that we want, we actually want it in writing. Because when you look at the other testimony that was the law, and when you highlight look at the highlighted sections of what's being removed, isn't what's in the paperwork that you look at today, but it will be removed from the law if this were to go through. So we strongly oppose it, but we do know change is going to happen. And we do need to look at it and make sure that our veterans are going to be well cared for by the services at the state homes. And the state homes, as far as I know, qualify as some of the top state homes in the country. So they really do a fantastic job. And that's my testimony. Thank you very much. And I tried to get to you in the chat room, but for some reason I couldn't get through to let you know that I just needed to speak on behalf of our membership. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you, Mr. Batchelor. Yes, we proceed in order of those four first. So you were in the queue for sure, sir. We wouldn't have forgotten about you. Question, Representative Tuttle.
Well, Jim, good to see you again. I recognize the chair in the background. I didn't know if that was from your military days or not, Jim.
No, I got to go to Paris for 2 weeks on business, and I had dinner in the Jules Verne restaurant the second night, and it was incredible because from where I was sitting, you could look straight out along the table, and there was the Arch of Triomphe right in front of you. It was beautiful.
You remember what W.C. Fields said?
No, I'm not sure.
He said, "I want to see Paris before I die." Just joking, Jim.
Well, I don't want to die because I saw Paris, but
all right,
I really couldn't believe the opportunity to not only see the Eiffel Tower, but to eat a French meal in it.
Well, there you go. But I want to thank you for all your years of service to veterans in this area in the state. Yeah.
Same this way. I appreciate what Representative Tuttle has done for us in helping to get the cemetery going 21 years ago now, I believe.
Hard to believe, Jim, huh?
Yeah.
Thank you, Representative Tuttle. Senator Farron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Batchelor, for being here today and sharing those thoughts. I'm a life member of the VFW up here in Norwich Walk and appreciate the efforts that the organization does. After listening to some of the testimony from some of the board members and from Colonel Cash and some of the questions we asked, with the board member makeup the way that it is, my understanding was that the VSOs were comfortable with that piece staying that way, but was still had to hang up on the CEO position. And with our discussion today about the preference, if we could clarify that and make that crystal clear for folks, would that change your mind a little bit as far as supporting this bill and trying to make some of those changes so we get the best qualified person for that CEO position?
The CEO position, I believe, is like what you had said, that it's a preference. We understand that the CEO is necessary to have medical background, to have an understanding of administration, and just to give it to a veteran because they're a veteran does not make it a quality service. So we don't have a concern about it not being a veteran. We have a concern about a veteran being equally qualified and being passed over.
All right, understood.
Now,
thank you.
The other part is that the concern about the board members not being veterans and that the 5 largest veterans organizations don't all have a guaranteed representation on the board is what there's a concern with the veterans organization, with the VFW.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that those 5 seats should still be something that there's a way to remove someone that isn't qualified, but I don't think any of the 5 organizations ever had any of their trustees removed for any reason whatsoever. And the other thing that I thought of, that this is not the main VFW, but that I was thinking because of this is, are we looking for a sample of the population of the United States to serve on the board? Are we looking for a sample of the population of the patients that are being cared for and the residents that are living in the homes? That's two total different populations. You might have a lot more Native American represented in Maine than you would have in another part of the country. You know, so it's when you start to say you want a representation, what do we want to represent? The country, or do we want to represent veterans? And they're all veterans or spouses.
Follow up, Mr. Chair.
Yep, go ahead, Senator.
I don't know if I can answer that totally for you, Mr. Batchelder. I spent a lot of time talking with Colonel Cash and some of the other VSOs around, and I think the intent of this is, and you know this, being in these veteran service office positions, you get the same people volunteering the same time over and over. And I think I think the board in the Maine Veterans Home is looking to try to find the best qualified individuals. And here in Maine, I don't think they're trying to mirror anything nationally. I think trying to find the best veterans here, taking care of our folks here in Maine. That's my opinion of what they're trying to do.
And I like when you say they're looking for the best veterans. That's what we want, is to look for the best veterans. If we can't find the veteran, then we need to definitely fill the top position with a very well qualified individual.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Farren. Any other questions for Mr. Batchelder? Seeing none, thank you, sir. We wish your wife a speedy recovery. Hope all turns out well there.
Yep, and I'm going to take off and go get her right now. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you, sir. You as well. Next up, we have Director Richmond.
Thank you. I must have hit the wrong button, but I definitely wanted to testify for this legislation. Good morning, Senator Lucchini, Representative Chiazzo, and honorable members of the Veterans and Legal Affairs Committee. My name is Dave Richmond. I'm the director of the Maine Bureau of Veteran Services, here today to testify in support of LD 1111, an act to update the statutes governing membership of the Board of Trustees of the Maine Veterans Homes. Maine Veterans Home was created as an independent nonprofit organization by the Maine legislature in 1977 to provide long-term care services to Maine's veterans and eligible family members. They opened their first home in Augusta, 1983. Since then, they have established locations in Caribou, Scarborough, South Paris, Bangor, and Machias. LD 1111 amends the sections of MRS 37B pertaining to the Maine Veterans Homes in order to ensure that the best care for Maine's veterans can be ensured for years to come. The first provision of this proposed legislation is to make changes to the composition of and the gubernatorial appointment process for the Board of Trustees. Over the last year, in consultation with both Maine Veterans Home and the administration, it became clear that the current law was outdated and does not promote a diverse search for the best qualified candidates to serve in these positions. The proposed law ensures that veterans organizations have input into the proposed nominees, yet it also allows the flexibility to nominate candidates who may not necessarily be veterans, but have other talents to bring to the board, such as a background in healthcare administration, facility management, or finance. The complexity and impact of quality nursing home care has regrettably been on full display over this last year. Given this, I'm grateful to acknowledge the outstanding dedication the Maine Veterans Homes Administration and staff has demonstrated over the past year in keeping our veterans safe and ensuring quality long-term health care. The other major change proposed by this legislation is to eliminate the requirement that the CEO of the Maine Veterans Home be an honorably discharged veteran. While we are incredibly fortunate to have the talents of veteran Kelly Cash currently serving as CEO, for the long-term success of the organization, we must be able to ensure that in the future, the most qualified person can be hired for this position, given the complexity of administering a 6-facility, statewide, long-term healthcare organization for Maine's veterans. I thank you for hearing this testimony on this bill, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you, Director Richmond. Any questions for the director while we have him here? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Director Richmond.
Thank you.
As always. So that concludes those who have signed up to testify. If there's anybody in the attendee room who wishes to testify and didn't make the sign-up list, please raise your virtual hand and we will recognize you now. Okay, seeing none, we will close the public hearing on LD 1111, and I will turn the gavel back over to Senator Lucchini.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so we'll get started on that second block of bills that we've had advertised. And just in case anybody wasn't here at the beginning, the order that we're going to go is the order as we advertised. Let me just make sure. Which would be LD 1061 followed by 1125, then 1126, and then 1155. So we're just looking for bill sponsor. I don't know if Representative Fecto is in the attendees list. He was just there a second ago, but not seeing him at the moment. So actually let's bounce to 1125 and then we'll come back and we'll look for Representative Fecto. So I'll open the public hearing on 1125, which is an act to define leadership political action committee. And this is a department bill and the sponsor, I believe, is Chairman Chiazzo. And Mr. Chairman, you're on mute.
Well, you're taking lessons from me, Mr. Chair.
I am. You caught me flat-footed. I'm in the middle of trying to transition, so my apologies. I was not ready to roll on that one. Give me just a quick second here. Let me pull it up.
Great. And where this is a department bill, we'll bring in Director Wayne as well to follow up after your testimony. This is from the Ethics Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Chris Chiazzo. I represent House District 28, beautiful West Scarborough. I am here pleased to be introduced to LD 1125, which is an act to define leadership and political action committees. As Senator Lucchini mentioned, this is a department bill. I'll just go through the summary for you very quickly. This bill defines leadership political action committees in the campaign reports and finance laws as a political action committee that is directly or indirectly established, maintained, or controlled by a member of the legislature who must be identified but is not a caucus political action committee. It also provides that it is a leadership political action committee that a Maine Clean Elections Act participating candidate or certified candidate may not establish while running for office, or with the exception of a 3-month period from January 1st to April 1st, is holding office. So again, as Senator Lucchini mentioned, this is a department bill, so I am happy to answer any questions, but certainly Director Wayne is present, and I'm sure will be much more qualified to answer any direct questions.
Thank you, Chairman Chiazzo. Any questions for the House Chair? Seeing none, thank you for presenting the bill. Up next, we will recognize Director Wayne from the Ethics Commission. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Senator Lucchini and Representative Chiazzo and distinguished members of the committee. I'm Jonathan Wayne, the Director of the State Ethics Commission, and thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of LD 1125, which is a department bill that would define the term leadership PAC. The term leadership PAC is sometimes used by members of the press and the public and others, but it is not defined in Maine law. And in a letter from last year dated February 13th, the Joint Standing Committee on Veterans and Legal Affairs asked our commission to submit a proposed definition of leadership PAC in order to create more transparency and accountability regarding PACs that are organized or that are directed by a legislator. So that letter from your committee was sent to us a little bit more than a year ago, and it's attached to my written testimony, so you can see that letter. So LD 1125 is our agency's response to the request from your committee. And our proposal is that leadership PAC be defined as a PAC that is directly or indirectly established, maintained, or controlled by a member of the Maine legislature. And that definition is based on, and also closely tracks, a definition of what is a leadership PAC that is in federal campaign finance law for some federal reporting purposes. So we have basically borrowed the definition directly from federal law, and our proposal is that we think it would fit well into Maine law. So this was not originally our idea, but the commission does believe that defining leadership PAC in the election law would be a good idea. We designate certain PACs as leadership PACs on our public access website based on our own internal definition. And in making that, in designating some PACs as leadership PACs, what we look to is whether a current member of the legislature is a treasurer or principal officer of the PAC, or is one of the, and we look to the registration statement where those two officer positions are listed. But we also look to the PAC registration statement to see if a legislator is listed as one of the individuals who is primarily responsible for making decisions for the PAC or raising funds for the PAC. So if a legislator is in one of those positions, we call it a leadership PAC based on our own definition, but we think it would be preferable if it were defined in law. Finally, I do want to say that in our experience, almost all legislators that we know of who control a PAC do not hesitate to identify themselves in the PAC's registration statement, but there could be rare situations, however, in which a legislator would like to maintain control over a PAC, but does not want to be listed on their registration. And in those rare situations, we think defining leadership PAC based on whether a legislator has direct or indirect control of the PAC through other people, that could have some value as a definition. So we have borrowed that concept from the federal definition. Thank you very much for your consideration of the bill, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Great. Thank you, Director Wayne. Representative Tuttle.
Director Wayne, about how many leadership PACs do we have presently?
As far as we can tell, there are 19.
19.
Yeah.
Now, John, is that up or down from previous years?
It might be down a few. I mean, we might, I usually think of it as around 25, but so a few less.
Have we researched how other states through NCSL handle their leadership PACs? You know, if there's an access where we could do that?
You know what? My colleague, Michael Dunn, was recommending the federal definition. So I don't know if he looked into that, but we can. And I'm sure based on your question, your analyst would do it too, but we'll definitely take a look at that and see if we can find something like that on the NCSL website.
Well, I'd like to have that for the work session,
okay,
Mr. Chair, if we could.
Yeah, thank you, Director. If you're able to
get
info, that'd be great. Great. Any other questions for Director Wayne? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Great. Next up on our list to testify, we have John Brodegam. Welcome.
Good morning, Senator Lucchini, Representative Cazzo, and honorable members of the Joint Standing Committee on Legal and Veterans Affairs. My name is John Brodegam, I'm a resident of Falmouth, and I'm here as legal counsel and policy advisor for Maine Citizens for Clean Elections to testify in favor of this bill. As you've already heard, this bill gives official legal status to a type of political action committee that has been common in Maine for many years. Legislators have created these political funds to pay for various activities to further their efforts in the political arena. They register their funds with the Ethics Commission, just as other political action committees are registered. And this creates transparency and brings the management of the fund to some degree under the jurisdiction of the commission with a uniform set of rules and requirements. But these leadership PACs have never been officially defined in statute. and LD 1125 fills that gap. Having a distinct legal status is a good idea because these committees are unique. Unlike other committees, the person who controls a leadership PAC is also an elected official who's simultaneously charged with all the responsibilities and obligations that come with that position. And giving money to a leadership PAC gives rise to the same concern about what the United States Supreme Court has identified as, quote, corruption or the appearance of corruption, unquote, that arises with contributions to candidates' campaign committee. I want to be really clear here that that's not to say that these contributions do represent corruption, but only that there's this concept of in the legal doctrine of corruption or the appearance of corruption, and that justifies examination in a slightly different way since legislators are involved than a plain vanilla PAC that would be run by people who are not connected to the legislature. So in that sense, leadership PACs are more akin to candidate committees than to independent issue PACs. Although this bill proposes no constraints on leadership PACs, the rationale for regulating them is no different from the need to regulate the candidate's own campaign committee. Therefore, a leadership PAC should be a distinct legal entity and special rules may be warranted. One rule that already exists is that clean election candidates are not allowed to have a leadership PAC. Although Maine Citizens for Clean Elections opposed that rule, it is now in the law, and we support having a definition that clarifies what exactly a leadership PAC is, and we support the draft that the Ethics Commission has testified on a short while ago. So with that, thank you, and happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you, Mr. Brautigam. Any questions from the committee at this time? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony today. Great, and that is the end of the list of those who have registered to testify, and not seeing anybody in the attendees list. We will close the public hearing on 11:25. Okay, the next bill that we'll take up is LD 1061. So I'll open the public hearing on LD 1061, an act to protect minor political parties that seek official party status. And we'll recognize the bill sponsor, Representative Fecteau. Welcome.
Thank you, Senator. Please excuse me not being here. I'm doing a little bit of Zoom hopping.
No worries.
We all do. So good morning, Senator, Representative, and my colleagues in the Joint Standing Committee on Veterans and Legal Affairs. I am Justin Fecteau, and I proudly represent House District 86, which consists of the western and northern portions of Augusta. In the U.S. Bill of Rights, there is the right of the people to peaceably assemble. In the Maine Constitution, the people have a right at all times in an orderly and peaceable manner to assemble, to consult upon the common good. When it comes to assembling under the banner of a political party, I do not believe we are living up to our constitutional obligations. I believe ranked choice voting doubly requires us to ensure minor political parties have a seat at the table, and I feel our current laws inhibit their right to assemble and get equal access to the ballot. Without a healthy spread of minor political parties, RCV in Maine has become a game of Team Red versus Team Blue, versus whoever Team Red or Team Blue convince to run to push the other team down the ballot. Recognized libertarians, socialists, reformers, constitutionalists, and democratic socialists will help RCV function more properly. In current state statute, in order to enroll a sufficient amount of voters, a burdensome number of 5,000 exists. This bill proposes to have that number. It also provides a provision that the Secretary of State must make the party aware if a party has fallen below the threshold and give them 90 days to rectify the issue. My idea for this comes from the time when several thousand libertarians were simply unenrolled by our previous Secretary of State when they fell below the general election threshold of 10,000 voters. Those voters were simply unassembled, voter suppressed, and disenfranchised by government action. And heeding the advice of the presiding officers to take bills out of the revisor's office as soon as possible and introduce any germane tweaks to the bill in the committee, I am introducing the following friendly amendment. This is in addition to my bill, this amendment does not supplant my bill. I am requesting that Section 301, subsection 1, Part E, be stricken from state statutes. Having two different hoops to jump through is, in my opinion, silly. Either a party has successfully assembled or not. And so that is it says in Part E, at least 10,000 voters enrolled in the party voted in the last general election, except that a qualified party does not have to meet this enrolled until the second general election after it has qualified and thereafter. And so it says 10,000 voters in the party voted in the general election. So that would mean that there's an unknown number of voters that would have to be registered in a particular party, maybe 15, 20, 25,000 based on the apathy of the election. There should be one number to qualify as an official political party in the state of Maine. Even if this bill passes, there are still hurdles in order to qualify for the ballot. When I first considered running for the state legislature, I was a registered libertarian. I was unable to run in my district as a libertarian since there weren't 25 libertarians within House District 86. So I ran as a Republican instead. Now, I'm obviously Maine's coolest Republican, but that's a discussion for another day. In summary, I am proposing 2,500 voter threshold for a minor political party to become a recognized political party by the state of Maine. This will greatly simplify our laws and reduce the number of lawsuits the state of Maine will face. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Representative Fecto. Any questions from the committee? Representative Chiazzo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could be so honored to act the coolest Republican, a question about if the 2,500 limit was the threshold to become a party, are you also suggesting that if you drop below 2,500, you'll be delisted, much like the Libertarian? You're just adjusting that number, correct?
Yes, Representative, thank you for the question. But the bill does provide a 90-day notice. So they can't just be fell swoop unenrolled, that they have to be told that, hey, this is going to happen unless you correct this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Corey, did you have a question?
No, I was just going to ask him how he determined that he was the coolest Republican, but I figured that Chiazzo already kind of hopped to that. So, but if he wants to answer that, I'd be fine with that.
It's due to numerous studies. I've forwarded it in the mail. It should be in the mail any day, headed to you, Representative. So you'll see.
And Representative, just to kind of put on your radar, I think the Secretary of State's office has got a bill where they've also put an option in about, I guess, a candidate in a preceding governor's or presidential race having gotten a certain percentage, like 5%, but just something to think about if that's a good way to retain a party qualification. I know that's should be coming out shortly. I just signed it, so it's an option as well.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions for the bill sponsor at this time? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Okay, so next we'll move to the public hearing portion. So registered to testify today, we have Richard Cachot. And I don't see Richard in the list. So we'll move to Tyler Rowe, who is registered against the bill. And if Richard Cachot is in the room, if you can raise your hand, we can call on you, but I don't see you at the moment. Welcome, Mr. Rowe.
Good morning, Senator Lucchini, esteemed members of the committee. Thank you particularly to Representative Supika, who represents my House district in your assembly. My name is Tyler Rowe of Bangor, and I am Secretary of the Libertarian Party of Maine. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today in regard to LD 1061, and thank you for your interest in protecting the right of minor parties to participate in Maine's electoral process. Thank you to Representatives Fecto, Andrews, Evangelos, and Plucker for sponsoring legislation with this interest in mind. LD 1061 improves Maine's unnecessarily restrictive ballot access laws by lowering the number of voters that a new party must enroll to become ballot qualified under Section 303. This is an improvement, but there are many other provisions of Maine law that make it practically impossible for citizens to form a new political party and qualify it for the ballot. To be effective, this bill must address those provisions as well. First, the January 2 deadline for a party to enroll the 5,000 members required by Section 303 is far too early. It forces a new party to build its voter support exclusively in the year before an election when voters are less engaged and less interested in politics. Second, after enrolling the 5,000 voters initially required under Section 303, a new party is required under Section 301(1)(e) to enroll another 5,000 voters and ensure that all 10,000 voters turn out to vote in the next election after the one in which it first qualifies and every election thereafter. I know Representative Fecteau spoke on a possible amendment to the bill which does address this. If a party does fail to do so, it is disqualified pursuant to Section 304, and all of its members are unenrolled pursuant to Section 306. It's extraordinarily difficult for a new party to comply with the enrollment and voter turnout requirements imposed by Section 301(1)(e). Enrollment drives are difficult and expensive to complete. It is much harder to convince a voter to enroll in a new party than to sign a nomination petition, even if the voter supports your platform. In the Libertarian Party of Maine's case, our 2016 enrollment drive succeeded only because a federal court extended the deadline for complying with Section 303 by more than 7 months until July. Third, it is practically impossible for a new party that becomes ballot qualified pursuant to Section 303 to place its candidates on Maine's general election ballot because the party is required to nominate by primary election under Section 331, but the primary election ballot access requirements imposed by Section 335 are so high that candidates cannot comply with them. As a result, the party's candidates are excluded from the primary and thus the general elections. That is what happened to the Libertarian Party of Maine. For the 2 election cycles when we were ballot qualified in 2016 and 18, all of our candidates, with a single exception, were excluded from the ballot. The exclusion of a new party's candidates from the ballot makes complying with the 10,000 voter turnout requirement under Section 301(1)(e) all but impossible. A party's members have little incentive to turn out to vote in an election from which the party's candidates are excluded. The combination of all these provisions practically guarantee that a new party will not survive longer than 2 election cycles in Maine. That was true of the Libertarian Party of Maine. Following the 2018 general election, the party was disqualified under Section 304, and all 6,240 of our members were unenrolled under Section 306.
Mr. Rowe, your time has expired, but if you can wrap up, we'll give you a little extra just to wrap up.
Yes, sir. I'll wrap up.
Yeah.
Thank you, Senator Lucchini. This left us no choice but to start the whole process over again with nothing to show for our efforts to enroll new members. And again, I appreciate the effort that LD 1061 takes to improve ballot access in Maine, but to be effective, it needs to do more. It must address the barriers imposed by the January 2 deadline under Section 303, the 10,000 member enrollment and voter turnout requirement under Section 301(1)(e), the mandatory primary under Section 331, and primary signature requirements under Section 335, and the disqualification provision of Section 304, and the unenrollment provision of Section 306. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you, Mr. Rowe. Representative Corey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I want to understand this a little bit more, and thank you for being here today, Mr. Rowe. When you had candidates that got excluded from the ballot, what did that mean? So did they go out and get the necessary signatures, but the party was not then recognized? Could you explain that a little bit?
Yes, so under current law, when a minor party is qualified, the signature requirements, they must obtain a certain amount of signatures from members of that party. Otherwise, they would have to run as an unenrolled candidate, which causes some issues with the timeline and increases the amount of signatures required to obtain.
What was that number of signatures that were required? What kind of election was it? Was it a a gubernatorial election? Was it a presidential election? What was it?
Yeah, the signature requirements vary from office to office. From our presidential elections require 4,000 signatures. Gubernatorial candidates require 3,000 if they're unenrolled, and I believe it's 2,000 if we're a qualified party. I apologize, I don't have those numbers in front of me. They vary from office to office, down to state house offices where Representative Fecto mentioned that you need 25 enrolled members in your party from your house district.
So like for a gubernatorial election, you would basically have to find like every registered libertarian in the state in order to get on the ballot.
That's exactly correct.
Wow. Okay, and then when they get kicked off the ballot, do they get kicked off as an unenrolled candidate then? Or they considered as an unenrolled candidate where they just clearly kicked off the ballot?
It's not necessarily a getting kicked off the ballot. We just don't obtain the ballot access to begin with.
Right. So they're not on the ballot. They're not then considered as an unenrolled. Okay.
Correct. There is another avenue to pursue ballot access as an unenrolled candidate, in which the signature requirements are higher. However, you can collect signatures from any registered voter in those cases.
In those cases. Okay. Thank you. It sounds tough. Thanks.
Thank you, Representative.
Thank you, Representative Corey. Representative Supika.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hello, good morning. So I was trying to take notes, and you mentioned a federal 2016 case of extending the deadline. Did I hear that correctly? Could you expand on that? I wasn't fast enough with my note taking there.
Yes, it's my understanding there was injunctive relief granted to the Libertarian Party of Maine to extend the capacity for us to obtain registered voters for an additional 7 months.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Representative.
Thank you, Representative Supika. Any other questions for Mr. Rowe? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Rowe, for your testimony this morning. Next up, we have Richard Kasha, I believe. My apologies if I haven't pronounced that right. I'm guilty of receiving that on many occasions myself.
You were almost exactly correct, so applause to you. My name is Richard Kasha. I'm a resident of Bridgeton. I welcome and appreciate the honorable members of the committee to hear my testimony. I am submitting the testimony in regards to an act to protect minor political parties that seek official party status, obviously. Providently, every Mainer of voting age is afforded a vote and a voice in our great constitutional republic. Mainers should not be required and forced into only one of two major parties when neither of those parties might represent their view, their ideals, or their beliefs. By supporting this bill, we give Mainers more choice and a way to become more engaged in the state and more politically involved, which is better for our society. I strongly encourage this committee to vote ought to pass on LD 1061, an act to protect minor political parties that seek official party status. Thank you very much for your time. I am Richard Kasha of Bridgeton. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Kasha. Any questions from the committee for Richard while we have him here? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Kasha, for your time.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Representative Corey, did you have a question?
No, I was just waving.
Okay. Okay.
Hi, Pat.
All right, that concludes those on the lists scheduled to testify for 1061. If there's anybody in the attendee room who wishes to speak on this bill, please raise your virtual hand and we will recognize you at this time. Okay, seeing none, then we will close the public hearing on LD 1061. Up next, we have LD 1126, which is an act to update the voter registration process. So we will open up the public hearing for LD 1126, and we will bring in to testify the lead sponsor, which is Representative Peirce of Falmouth.
Hello.
Good morning, Representative Peirce. The floor is yours when you are ready.
Thank you so much. It's great to see everyone today. Good morning, Senator Lucchini and Representative Chiazzo and honorable members of the Veteran and Legal Affairs Committee. My name is Teresa Peirce and I represent House District 44, which is the majority of Falmouth. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you today to present LD 1126, an act to update voter registration process. In 2020, a record number of Americans voted in the general election, a remarkable achievement to see in the midst of a pandemic. Here in Maine, we owe a lot to our town clerks, poll workers, and other election administrators for enabling so many people to cast their ballots safely and securely. Moving forward, we need to be looking at ways that we can replicate those successes and continue taking steps to improve our voting system in order to strengthen our democracy. Serving my fourth term in the Maine House of Representatives, and after being on the Falmouth Town Council for 6 years, I know from firsthand experience that our democracy is only as strong as the people's participation in it. In order for our elected officials to best represent our community's needs, we need as many people as possible showing up to the polls to make their voices heard. We are fortunate to live in Maine, a state that has long established itself as a leader in administrating safe, secure elections that yield some of the highest voter turnout in the country. But there is certainly room for improvement. And that is why I have introduced LD 1126, which is designed to make voting more accessible by creating an online voter registration system. Currently, 40 other states and DC successfully offer online voter registration, which allows voters to submit their information through an online portal designed by the Secretary of State. Voters would also be able to use the online portal to update their existing registration in case of a change of address, party enrollment. That's very telling from our previous LD that you just heard, name, or another piece of personal information. While Mainers would still be able to register through the paper-based process, this online system would offer an easy alternative for many people who would otherwise have difficulty in getting to their town office during open business hours, such as Mainers who are homebound, who work long hours, possibly own a small business, or live in remote areas. An online voter registration system would also benefit town clerks and other election administrators. In 2020, as hundreds of thousands of voters mailed in their voter registration forms to their respective town clerks, clerks faced significant financial and administrative burdens in processing all of these registrations in a timely manner. Online or OBR registration reduces the cost on our towns and election administrators by eliminating the need for clerks to complete hours of burdensome manual data entry. That frees up time for our clerks to do what they do best, administer safe and secure elections. The system would also enhance the security of our elections by ensuring only complete and correct information is being submitted to clerks. Online voter registration almost completely removes the chance of misinterpreting or mistranscribing handwritten data and compromising voter information. Additionally, since relying heavily on paper forms, runs the risk of voters' forms and information being lost. The online portal will keep voters' personal data safe by creating an electronic encrypted record of each submission. The more people who participate in our democracy, the stronger our representation will be. If we want to pass legislation that truly meets the needs of Maine people, we need to make the voter registration process easier for folks who are eligible. Passing LD 1126, creating an online voter registration system in Maine, is a critical step in that direction. I understand that others will be speaking in support of this bill, including the Secretary of State, Shenna Bellows. I'm also here to provide you with more information and context about this proposal and answer questions. I would like to share that I did offer a friendly amendment based on some conversations that I had with the Secretary of State, which I think showed up in your email box today. It's really quite friendly. It's about some wording changes and a couple other small tweaks that will make it a better process, I believe. That being said, thank you so much for your time and attention. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I hopefully can garner your support of LD 1126.
Thank you, Representative Peirce. Representative Doloff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have one question. Because I haven't seen the program, I don't know how it works, but how are we going to guarantee that only citizens register to vote online?
When you sign up to register to vote online, or when you register to vote anywhere at your town hall or not, you provide ID. This would be either a Maine license, driver's license, or a Maine ID. Or if you didn't have either of those, you could provide a social security number, and then with verification against your address.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Dolph. Any other questions for Representative Peirce? Okay, seeing none, thank you, Representative. We appreciate your sponsorship of the bill this morning.
I look forward to listening to the other people participating, and I'm free to answer any questions. And I think the public hearing is Friday. You guys are at rapid speed here.
Work session, you mean?
Work session, sorry, yeah, thanks. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Representative Peirce. Next up, we have co-sponsor, the good representative from Camden, Representative Dudera. Nice to see you again, Representative Dudera.
Thank you very much. I don't believe I am a co-sponsor, but I have a very similar bill, so I did want to speak in favor of this one.
Oh, my apologies. I thought I saw you on the list, but go ahead. You have the floor now.
Okay, great. Thank you. Greetings, Senator Lucchini, who's maybe not here, Representative Chiazzo, and members of the Committee on Veterans and Legal Affairs. I'm Representative Vicky Dudera, I represent House District 94, the towns of Camden, Islesboro, and Rockport. I'm here today to speak in favor of LD 1126, an act to update the voter registration process. The idea of modernizing our system to offer secure and accessible online voter registrations near and dear to my heart, so much so that I've also submitted a bill for Maine to move in this direction. It's not yet printed, and it may prove redundant given Representative Peirce's bill. So that's why I wanted to speak in favor of this legislation today, as amended. When was the last time any of you tried to register to vote in Maine? I would wager that, like me, you've lived in this state for many years, if not your whole life. And so the last time you registered might have been quite a while ago. Unless you're a teenager or have recently moved here, you may not know how cumbersome the current process is. You fill out a card at your town office or city hall, or at a voter drive, or at a branch office of the motor vehicle office. You download and print the application found online. You then have to hand deliver or mail your card to your municipality. And perhaps this doesn't sound too difficult, but at a time when many Americans do everything from banking to dating, to reviewing medical records all online, and many do not even own printers anymore, our current method of registration is so 90s. Online voter registration is convenient and fast. It's also safe. It's a no contact way of registering to vote. And given the year we have all just gone through, it makes sense to think of enhancements to our democratic system that are touch free. In addition to being convenient and safe, online registration saves taxpayers money and improves voter roll accuracy. Processing electronic applications is a fraction of the cost of processing paper applications. Arizona, the innovator in paperless voter registration, experienced a reduction in per registration costs from 83 cents per paper registration to just 3 cents per online registration. And here's another plus. Election officials report that letting voters enter their own information significantly reduces the likelihood of incomplete applications and mistakes. So it's not surprising that online registration is incredibly popular and has spread rapidly. In 2010, only 6 states offered online voter registration, and now 38 states and the District of Columbia do. Fewer than a dozen states do not have online voter registration, and Maine's one of them. It's high time we modernize this cornerstone of our democracy. I urge you to vote in favor of LD 1126 as amended. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Representative Dudera. Representative Corey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for being here, Representative Dudera. My ongoing concern with this, and it's because, we seem to be opening up absentee voting in the state. We're even talking about doing, ongoing absentee status is that there's signature verification that goes along with this. So basically your green voter registration card that we all have sitting with our town clerk has a signature on it, from which they verify, things like absentee ballots to make sure that we're actually the ones that fill them out, and they're probably also in a lot of cases looking at absentee ballot request forms, as well, so that we're doing that. With online voter registration, how can we get a physical signature by which our clerks can then, compare the absentee ballots with the actual, voter themselves? It seems to be the last fingerprint, you know what I mean, we're dropping on those ballots. Thank you.
Well, to answer that, thank you for that question. I know that they do use driver's licenses, ID cards, social security numbers. I don't know if they also verify with an actual signature. That's a good question, probably for the people who will come after me. I suppose that there would be a way. I mean, in my business, I deal with electronic signatures all the time. So I don't know if that's a way that they can do this too, but I'm sure we can figure that piece out, and it is a good question.
All right. Thank you, Representative Corey. Any other questions for Representative Dudera? Seeing none. Thank you, Representative. Great to see you again.
Nice to see all of you. Have a great day.
You as well. So now we'll kick off the public hearings side of things, and we will start by welcoming the Secretary of State, Secretary Bellows, and when she is completed, I will turn the gavel over to Senator Lucchini, who is back. So, Madam Secretary, when you are ready.
Thank you, Representative Chiazzo, Senator Lucchini, and members of the Joint Standing Committee on Veterans and Legal Affairs. I am Shenna Bellows, Maine Secretary of State, and I'm here to enthusiastically offer testimony in favor of LD 1126. Mainers, no matter who they are or where they come from, deserve the freedom to exercise their right to vote and to have that process be convenient, easy to use, and secure. And while our state has long been a leader in that field, we cannot rest on our laurels. My top priorities as Secretary of State are technology modernization and equity and inclusion. Our goal is to make voting as accessible, convenient, and secure as possible. Online voter registration utilizes technology to make voter registration easier and more efficient for voters and election administrators alike. Additionally, online voter registration will help us reach more Maine citizens to increase voter participation from more communities, advancing our goals of equity and inclusion. Americans today are accustomed to having the option to conduct nearly all their life's business online. Banking, shopping, medical appointments, vehicle registrations or license renewal, even vehicle purchases can be conducted securely online. It is a reasonable expectation that voters be able to register to vote online as well. As Representative Peirce has noted, nearly all other states offer this convenient option, and we should not let Maine fall further behind in a field where we often lead the way. An additional benefit to online voter registration, already mentioned but important to emphasize, is that it will be easier on the municipal clerk's end of the process. Transcription errors, illegible addresses, and time spent entering data will be reduced when a voter's information is submitted to the municipal clerk via an online portal rather than on the traditional paper form. To ensure accuracy of our central voter registration system, the municipal clerks will still review the filing and determine whether it is new or if there is an existing record for that voter that needs to be updated with the new data provided. Developing and implementing an online voter registration portal will take time and effort from our information services team, but in my time as secretary so far, I'm continually impressed by their expertise and work ethic. We appreciate the sponsor's willingness to change the date in the bill to November 2023 so we can leverage the advantages of a new central voter registration system scheduled for implementation in 2023 and implement online voter registration at the same time. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Bellows. Any questions from the committee at this time? Representative Corey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for being here today, Secretary Bellows. You probably heard my question of Ms. Dodera. How do we get a physical signature in our hands with online, voter registration? That's a huge, concern of mine, and I want it, in the clerk's hands. Could we, possibly look at an amendment to this bill that where if somebody does an online voter registration, they're then mailed a card, of which, they're required to, provide a signature and then mail it back, to the clerk. I know that brings up the price, of doing this, but that physical signature, I think means a lot, in terms of, providing for safe and secure, elections.
We completely agree that the signature is an important security component. I do want to draw your attention to the bottom of page 2 of the legislation. And it states very clearly here under section A-8, subsection 1, if the vote, this is in addition, if the voter submits an online voter registration application through the Secretary of State's publicly accessible website, the applicant must meet the requirements of section 152, subsection 1, paragraph K, to satisfy the signature requirement of this subsection. So we would need to develop as part of the system a way for applicants without a driver's license or ID to upload a scanned signature image or a picture of the signature. That would need to be developed further in the rules. I think it absolutely could be done with 40 states already leading the way on online voter registration. We're not inventing this from scratch. With those who have a main driver license or main ID, we can grab a signature directly from the Bureau of Motor Vehicle files.
Ooh, I got a question. So why do we require people to go get a physical license at the BMV when you could simply, fill out the forms, take an eye test with your doctor, and then upload a picture and a signature? That'd make it a lot easier, right?
My language. I would love to work with you on legislation to allow us to do some of that. I will say you can currently renew a license online at the BMV website. You cannot get a real ID online. That is something that, at least at this date, is requiring an in-person process. But technology modernization is so important. And to your point, people are doing more and more online, and clearly the private sector has shown us that we can maintain a very high level of security and integrity with online transactions.
I'm just going to say, me, like many Mainers, hate going to the BMV.
Well, I was at the Caribou BMV on Friday, and it was really a pleasure. So just a shout out to the BMV staff, but I hear you that the idea of going to a physical office anywhere, to echo Representative Dodera, feels very 1990s.
Next time I will go to the Caribou BMV. It takes less time for me to drive to Caribou and back than just line.
We're working on the wait times.
Representative Kinney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to point out, and I'm sure you can agree with me, Secretary Bellows, that not everyone can actually renew their driver's license online. I happen to be one of those exceptions to that rule. And I will say I have had to renew my driver's license when I've been home from over the road trucking in Portland, in Bangor, in Auburn, and I've never had trouble. And those are some pretty big cities in the BMV, and these were times when wait times were much higher. So I'm with Representative Corey that we need to make sure that there is a proper way to ensure these signatures, and we need to also recognize that not everyone can, by state rule, maybe it's federal rule, cannot necessarily renew their driver's licenses online. So that's not a blanket statement and should not be used in argument for this.
Thank you for clarifying the current situation. And I just wanted to let folks know that for some people that option is available. We are trying to continually improve services. And I think what's important about this bill is it's about expanding options for Maine citizens. right? It's not about forcing anyone into a particular way of doing things. It preserves the paper-based registration. If you want to register same day, on election day, you can do that. If you want to go down to your clerk's office to the town hall, you can do that. Or this would simply expand those options, just like 40 other states are currently doing.
Right, and Secretary, so we currently allow people to mail in voter registration information. So this would just be essentially like an electronification of that process, or?
Yes, it doesn't change the process of registering. It merely creates an online system for doing so.
Right. Other questions for the Secretary at this time? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony this morning. Okay, next we will move through the list of people who have pre-registered. Again, as the House Chairman said, if once you get called, if you can just remember to state your name, your residence in the organization you represent, if any. And a reminder that testimony is limited to 3 minutes. So we'll begin with Abigail Theobald, Adam Cody, and Alicia Melnick. So Abigail, oh, if you're there, welcome. Yep.
Hello, good morning, Senator Lucchini, Representative Chiazzo, and honorable members of the Committee on Veterans and Legal Affairs. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Abigail Theobald, and I live in Lyman, Maine. I am here today to enthusiastically support LD 1126, an act to update the voter registration process because the pandemic has slowed the mailing times of voter registration drastically in state and out of state, therefore making it harder for college students to register to vote. As a college student in the state of New Hampshire, the out-of-state mailing of a voter registration application from Maine can take far more than 2 weeks to be delivered. I became invested in this problem when I began working as a fellow for the Campus Selection Engagement Project, as my goal this past semester was to help students from my college register to vote. There is a large population of students from the state of Maine that attend the same institution as myself and were not yet registered. Most of these students did not have cars on campus, therefore making it hard for them to get back to Maine to register to vote in person, and with mailing times being extended due to the pandemic, there are few options for these individuals. While this is the reality of the current system, we can find positive solutions to rectify the problem at hand. Passing this bill will prevent future Mainers attending school in other states from facing the challenge of registering to vote in time for an election when mailing times are slow and traveling home is not an option. Additionally, the state will benefit as well because the implementation of online voter registration allows for the cost of printing, scanning, and processing voter registration forms to be foregone. The verification process becomes fast and secure since voter registration records can be linked to driver's licenses or state ID records, as well as social security numbers. Because online voter registration would reduce barriers that traditionally prevent Mainers attending school in other states from registering to vote, students such as myself will feel more inclined to participate in our nation's democratic processes. Within and out of state mailing times being traditionally slow and even slower now due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Maine college students would benefit greatly from an OVR system, as it would make the process of registering to vote more realistic and convenient. While I highlighted that the pandemic has created additional barriers for voter registration, OVR will have a lasting positive effect that extends beyond the pandemic. Thank you for this. For this reason, I'm asking you to please vote yes on LD 1126. Thank you very much for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Great, thank you for your testimony. Any questions from committee members at this time? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony today.
Thank you for having me.
Great. So next up, we have Adam Cody. Welcome, sir.
Senator Lucchini, how are you? Thank you for having me today. Representative Chiazzo, members of the Joint Standing Committee on Veterans and Legal Affairs. My name is Adam Cody. I'm an attorney and often testify before the Energy Committee. I think this is the first time I've been before your committee. Typically when I testify, I do it on behalf of a client. Today I'm doing it personally as a veteran, and I wanted to specifically address the portions of this bill that I think were very properly framed by Representative Pierce and Dudera and the Secretary of State as really being an advancement in modernization and technology. I had 3 deployments during my 20 plus years. Most of it's been the Maine National Guard. During one of my deployments, I served at what's called a VAO, which is the voter assistance officer. And when you serve on these deployments, a lot of times you get voluntold to do certain things beyond your regular job. Senator Farron is laughing at that. I know he was probably doling out a lot of those. But anyway, during my deployment to Iraq, that's what I had to do for the battalion. And essentially, every deployed unit has somebody designated that's supposed to go unit by unit to make sure soldiers know how to be registered to vote, that they're prepared to vote if they want to. It's completely nonpartisan. It's just sort of providing that service. So I wasn't really in favor of having to take on this task, but I did learn a lot about the process and how it's done. And very quickly, during my 3 deployments, my first one was to Bosnia in 1997. And everyone really communicating through home. You could occasionally call home, but mostly it was letters. It was still letters back then. It wasn't much different than our predecessors did during really Vietnam, except the letters went quicker. When I went to Iraq in 04 and 05, soldiers, service members spent a lot more time on email, a lot less letters, and we had more access to phones. By the time I had my last deployment to Afghanistan in 2013 and 2014, it was just about entirely online communications, FaceTime, emails, calling home sometimes, but mostly FaceTime. And in my tent as a company commander, I had access to a secure SIPRNet computer. The bottom line on this bill is that despite all of these advances in technologies, we are still asking our service members to register to vote the same way that their grandparents did. And this is really an advancement in that. I would ask that you support this bill and appreciate your time before this committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cody. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
So next up, we have Alicia Melnick, and she'll be followed by Andrew Lardy and Anna Keller. And as you can see, our list is alphabetical by first name, so you can kind of tell when you're coming up. So welcome, Alicia.
Thank you so much. Senator Lucchini, Representative Piazza, members of the Veterans and Legal Affairs Committee. My name is Alicia Melnick. I'm a resident of Portland, but I'm here today on behalf of the Center for Secure and Modern Elections to testify in support of LD 1126, an act to update the voter registration process. And really appreciate the sponsor, Representative Pierce, for bringing this forward. As you've heard today, we support this bill and also the friendly amendments offered by the sponsor and Secretary of State. While Maine has already established itself as a national leader in civic participation, we've learned over the course of the pandemic that more can be done to ensure that we have the most secure, efficient, and accessible election system in the country. The COVID-19 pandemic posed significant challenges to election administration last year. One of the most burdensome for administrators and anxiety-producing for voters being the mail time delays that impacted receipt and processing of voter registration forms and absentee ballot requests. Near registration deadlines, clerks were inundated with voter registration forms and worked tirelessly to manually process registrations to ensure every eligible Mainer that wanted to vote could do so. Online voter registration offers an opportunity to streamline the registration process for voters by allowing them to fill out a voter registration form online from the convenience and safety of their own homes. OVR makes the registration process more efficient and streamlined for voters and for clerks and election administrators as well. The online form protects against incomplete and incorrect forms being submitted by immediately notifying voters if they've made a mistake and allowing correction. This ensures that clerks are only receiving complete and correct forms and reducing the need for clerks to chase down voters to remedy a form mistake or obtain and add missing information. Additionally, because OVR eliminates the need for handwriting information, the data from the online form is much cleaner and much easier to match and verify. Additionally, OVR automatically redacts sensitive information like social security numbers immediately after submission, taking away additional steps like shredding or manual redaction on a paper form, which also enhances the security for voters. The state of Maine also benefits from online voter registration. It will allow Maine to forego the cost of printing, scanning, and processing hundreds of thousands of voter registration forms each year. The cost of implementing an OVR system would fall just under $100,000 in our estimate, and in the long run, this will be far outweighed by the money saved. OVR also provides a built-in mechanism for voter rolls to stay as up-to-date as possible, as voters can input address changes and other updates into the online form. Thank you, Representative Chiazzo. Implementing OVR is a surefire way to increase accessibility to democracy, increase the security and efficiency of Maine's election system, and even save the state money along the way. I urge you to vote ought to pass on this bill. And I would just mention to Representative Doloff that Pennsylvania, Minnesota, Delaware, and Kentucky are just a couple of examples of states that allow signatures to be uploaded. And I'll just personally say that I was trying to get my check-in to Cobb's Cook Bay Campground for some camping in the fall and realized that I have no idea where a stamp is, where an envelope is. So I really appreciate some of the references to kind of the 1990s and find myself also really reliant for so many things on online systems. I really appreciate all of your time today. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from the committee at this time? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Ms. Milnick? Yep. Okay, next up we have Andrew Lardy. Welcome, sir.
Good morning, and Senator Lucchini, Representative Chiazzo, and honorable members of the Standing Committee on Veterans and Legal Affairs. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Andrew Lardy. I live in Brunswick, and I'm here today on behalf of Bowdoin College. I'm here today to support LD 1126 because it will remove significant barriers to the franchise, particularly for younger voters, and shore up the health of our democracy at a time when it is under siege. I oversee nonpartisan voter support at Bowdoin College through my role at the McKean Center for the Common Good. Currently, my small crew spends a massive amount of time each year manually registering not only new students who want to vote locally, but also re-registering every local student voter whose dorm assignment has changed since the last election. The error rate for voters filling out paper registration applications is very high, even with assistance. So we audit forms and track voters down to make corrections before they are passed on to the town clerk. Then, despite the best efforts, transcription errors result in inaccurate records and force some students to register again on election day. This process is one reason that even in the record turnout election of 2018, 48% of Maine's eligible college students did not cast a ballot. For all eligible Mainers under age 25 in 2018, fully 70% did not vote. Fortunately, it does not have to be this way. As you know, 40 other states have implemented OVR, and the increased accuracy, efficiency, accessibility would improve the health of Maine's democracy in several ways. It would eliminate significant barriers to voting for Mainers who have to move around, regardless of their age, and for those living in towns with limited services. And it would allow educators like me to focus on the deeper work that is needed, helping young Mainers build the civic skills to become lifelong active citizens engaged in the political process. This is how we can reverse the rise of political cynicism and despair that is evident, particularly among college men who have been targeted by reactionary conspiracy peddling in recent years. Research shows that voting or not voting is not so much an annual choice as it is a habit, and one that is best developed early. Please vote yes on LD 1126 so all Mainers can access the franchise and build that habit.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Thank you again for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Mr. Lardy. Any questions from the committee at this time? See none, thank you. Okay, next up we have Anna Keller, and after Anna will be Desti Homan Sprague, and Kate Brennan. So welcome.
Good morning. Thanks, Senator Lucchini, Representative Cazzo, and members of the committee. My name is Anna Keller. I'm the Executive Director of the League of Women Voters of Maine and a resident of Portland. As you may know, in 1973, Maine was the first state in the country to enact same-day voter registration. For 2 generations and still today, same-day voter registration is one of the most important measures that states can take to improve voter participation. Many other states followed Maine's lead, and today all of the top performing states in terms of voter turnout offer same-day voter registration. So we're proud that Maine was a leader in this reform. But flash forward, times change, technology changes, voters adapt, and our election systems must keep pace. Online voter registration is the next threshold reform to keep Maine a leader in voting systems. As you've heard, OVR is secure, it's cost effective, and it's good for voters, which is why 40 other states have already enacted this reform. Some of the reasons that the League supports online voter registration is that it makes voter registration more accessible for voters who confront a variety of obstacles, including those with mobility issues, elderly voters, disabled voters, economically disadvantaged voters, and rural voters, among others. Like you heard, online voter registration encourages participation in our elections by new and younger voters, many of whom are accustomed to using online services and resources for virtually every aspect of their life, but may be less familiar with traditional avenues for voter registration. It also adds convenience with no compromise in security for voters of every age and demographic who change their address within a town, move to a different municipality in Maine, or change their name as a result of marriage or another reason. The 40 states that already have experience with OVR can provide proven blueprints for convenient, secure, efficient online voter registration. While many of these states restrict OVR to voters with a driver's license or state ID, we strongly applaud the sponsors of this bill for providing access to voters with social security numbers, ensuring a system that's accessible to a broad swath of voters and not just those who already have easy access to voting systems. The League supports steps to modernize elections and voter registration to make it more accessible, secure, and efficient. In other states, local election officials have cited improved integrity of the voter rolls that results from reduced dependency on illegible handwritten applications. With the passage of LD 1126, Maine voters for the first time will be able to view and change their own information. The League of Women Voters views LD 1126 as one more building block to provide Maine voters with dynamic, easy-to-use online voting tools. Thanks for the opportunity to testify, and I would be happy to answer any questions from the committee.
Great. Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from the committee at this point? Seeing none, thank you. Okay, next on our list is Desti Homan Sprague, followed by Kate Brennan, and then Patty Du Bois. So welcome, Desti. There, yep.
Good morning, Senator Lucchini, Representative Cazzo, and members of the committee. I'm happy to join you here today on behalf of the Maine Women's Lobby. I'm a resident of Bath, but of course, representing the lobby for over 40 years, we have advocated for public policy that increases the health, wellness, safety, and economic security of Maine women and girls. We're here today in support of LD 1126 and thank Representative Peirce for sponsoring this bill. Women are dedicated voters in Maine and across the country. In the 2020 presidential election, women were 59% of the total voters in our state. But in many cases, they experience more barriers to the franchise, especially women from marginalized or disenfranchised communities. National data indicate that on average, Black female voters have to wait twice as long to vote as white voters overall. Many of the same barriers that have resulted in women carrying a disproportionate burden during the pandemic are the same barriers that we see in accessing voting. Women are more likely to be care providers for their families, more likely to be in low-wage positions with less flexibility, and more likely to head single-parent households. For Mainers who want to vote, these don't always seem like the voting barriers, but they're very real parts of how women are navigating their daily lives. And when we add in other circumstances such as lack of transportation, language or literacy needs, accessibility needs, it becomes that much harder. That is why so many statewide systems, such as driver's license renewal or camping reservations, have moved to increase flexibility and online access. Online voter registration is a common sense update that accounts for the real needs of people in our communities. It's a safe and secure system that helps people fully engage. Voting is not only a right and a privilege, it's the tool that we use to build the Maine we want to live in. When every eligible Mainer can participate in that building, we're more likely to have the policies and systems that lift up all of our communities and reflect our collective needs and strengths. Participation and engagement in every system improves when we account for the realities of people's lives, their employment structure, their work schedules, family duties, accessibility needs, and more. Picture a single mom with 2 young kids, still in a stroller and no car. She works in a low-wage part-time job and counts on TANF to make ends meet. She can apply for TANF online and walk to work, but in order to register to vote, she has to find a ride for her family of 3 to City Hall between the hours of 9 and 5, Monday through Friday, and navigate a stroller through a 19th century building, then wait in line with 2 toddlers. The harder it is to vote, the less likely people are to do it. We believe, and hope you do too, that this woman deserves that opportunity as much as anyone else. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony this morning. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Kate Brennan, followed by Patty Du Bois, and then Megan Sway. So welcome.
Thank you so much. Senator Lucchini, Representative Chiazzo, and members of the Committee on Veterans and Legal Affairs. My name is Kate Brennan. I live in Greene, and I work with Maine Equal Justice. Maine Equal Justice is a nonprofit civil legal aid and economic justice organization working to increase economic security, opportunity, and equity for people in Maine. And in our 25-year history, we've supported hundreds of low-income community members to register to vote. And we support LD 1126 because we see how economic realities, systemic racism, and what the Brennan Center for Justice, no relation, calls outdated systems using outdated technology, and how they lead to voter disenfranchisement. We want to work with the Maine legislature to make sure that all people have a voice and can fully participate in our democracy, that income, race, geography, ability, and many other things do not determine someone's access to one of the most important rights in our democracy, the right to vote. Over the years, we've helped low-income people navigate the voting process and vote for the first time against significant odds. And each time it works out, someone gets their I voted sticker, it feels like a small miracle. The registration and voting process as it is currently designed presents significant barriers for people with limited resources, and it takes tremendous effort to help just one person make it happen. And I'm going to share a story with you from personal experience that really echoes what Dusty just shared about a young single mom that I gave a ride to register to vote. She was registering for the first time, and she had recently had a baby with 2 young school-age children as well. She wanted to register to vote badly, but without a car or the money to pay for a taxi, she was discouraged. She thought about walking, but City Hall was across town. This is in Augusta. She thought about the mail-in process, but she didn't have a printer to print the form and mail it in. She has a hearing impairment and had been difficult getting help at City Hall in the past. As she was filling out her voter registration card, I thought about all the steps it took to get there. Her work schedule and responsibilities at home didn't give her much time to get to City Hall during open hours. She needed to go when her older kids were at school and she was off from work. We loaded her car seat while we waited for her baby to wake from his nap. As you can imagine, online voter registration would eliminate the time, stress, and unnecessary barriers that exist in the paper registration system for this mom and so many others. And we're here today because we know it doesn't have to be this way. As others have mentioned, nearly 40 other states use an online voter registration process that is time tested and secure. And I'll just mention that much research has been done on the relationship between inequality and voting gaps. These are not isolated examples. We see stark numbers when it comes to low-income people, people of color, tribal members, and other traditionally marginalized groups registering and voting across the country. And even though Maine is a high turnout state, we know that it's no different here in terms of the barriers. I've included some links to resources that I encourage the committee to refer to when you're working this bill. Please vote ought to pass on LD 1126. And thank you so much for your time. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Ms. Brennan. Any questions from the committee at this time? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Okay, next up we have Patty Du Bois, and she'll be followed by Megan Sway and Nicole Clegg.
Thank you. Good morning, Senator Lucchini, Representative Chiazzo, and members of the Veteran and Legal Affairs Committee. My name is Patty Du Bois, and I represent the Maine Towns and City Clerks Association, and we're speaking in support of LD 1126. And we thank you for the opportunity to share some of our thoughts on the bill. Municipal clerks are also concerned about the possible lack of a signature for use in administering voter registration and other election procedures with voters who register and don't have a signature on file to a state agency. Clerks routinely refer to the voter's signature when verifying petition signatures, when determining if the correct voter's data is being updated, and when comparing signatures on absentee ballot applications and envelopes. This bill refers to a third-party organization or organizations being used to submit voter registration applications, to which clerks would prefer some clarification. Finally, there's no requirement for clerks to print out the electronic submission in order to maintain the paper file of voter registration applications. Clerks often refer to the paper file and would prefer to maintain this file as a backup to the CVR records. We appreciate the opportunity to testify this morning, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great, thank you, Ms. Du Bois. Any questions from committee members? Representative Tuttle.
Patty, I had a question. Have we researched on how this is working in other states from the Clerks Association?
We have not reached out to other states as yet. I'm assuming that once the Secretary of State starts moving, should this bill pass, starts moving this forward, that we'll be looped into that process to help with, procedural questions and maybe some beta testing of the procedure. And we'd be happy to help with that process if they need our assistance.
I think that would be helpful for the work session if we could work together on how it does work in other states and how it might apply to the state of Maine. But Patty, thank you for your input on this.
Thank you.
And Representative Tuttle, we can ask the Secretary to see what her colleagues recommend as best practices.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. You have corrected me positively again.
That was a great idea.
All right, just joking.
Not a correction.
Right. No.
We'll get that.
Well, Mary Ann was telling me to say that, right? Mary Ann, yes.
Representative Kinney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Don't believe him. I didn't tell him to say anything. Thank you, Ms. Du Bois, for being here. I always appreciate your testimony. You give us matter-of-fact testimony all the time. You don't tend to put a lot of extras in that may or may not go with this. And I appreciate that you have that same concern about signatures, and wonder if you have any thoughts on a path to make sure those signatures are verified and to help put the rest of us at ease as well.
Well, having this be an unknown as far as how this will be administered, in any database, there are, required fields that would need to be completed before submission could take place. I would assume that the signature piece would be one of those required fields. But again, not knowing what the system is or what the procedures will be, that needs to be worked through. But I think that that's a key piece in the voter registration process, obviously.
Representative Corey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to sort of ask a question along the same lines. Like, I've always sort of had a strong feeling that, you know, states run their own elections, the federal government doesn't. And at the base of sort of those elections is our system of town clerks that are closest and know our voters the best. And I think this is really where this physical signature, you know, comes into play. You know, for me, even a scanned, you know, signature that you may be able to look up online versus that signature card that you guys actually keep on file in the town clerk's office for you to have are sort of vastly, you know, different things to look at. I mean, where was, I mean, I understand where your organization is on this, but how strongly, you know, is it important to your organization to actually have some kind of physical signature on hand, you know, when having to compare for absentee ballots, and especially if we do something like expand to ongoing, you know, absentee voter registration?
Right. Well, as I pointed out, it's very important. We use those signatures as a comparison on most everything we do with voter registration. So petition signature verification, absentee receipts, absentee applications, and also just to ensure that we're looking at the right voter when we're updating a person's name or address. You know, we'll look at the signature to make sure that it is the right voter. So it is key to maintain the voter registration system and maintain that level of security.
So this really is kind of a step away from local control of elections in a lot of ways, right?
Well, I would say probably not, because ultimately it's the duty of the registrar to review the materials that are provided by the voter to ensure that they've met all the criteria to be a registered voter. So
but the registrar is somebody in your office, correct?
Well, I happen to be the registrar in the clerk, and most clerks are the registrar as well.
So what I'm saying is that this would be a further departure, you know, if there wasn't a physical card in your office and everything else, this would be a further departure of local control over our election process.
I understand what you're saying. My understanding is that the same information would be provided rather than being in person or through the mail. It would be an electronic form, and that requirement of the digital signature would be there. So it sounds like it would be the same material provided, just in a different format, is my understanding.
Right, and Representative Dolph.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a concern where you can register to vote the same day. And if it's online, how are we going to verify a so-called signature or a license number or whatever identification they give if they're gonna register and vote the same day? Where's the time frame to verify that they are a citizen to vote, number one, and all the information they gave is correct?
Right. Well, on election day, they would be doing that process in person. There would be no need for a person to register online and then go to the polls to vote. They wouldn't be on the voter list, and they would have to visit the registrar's table before they could check in anyway. So on election day, the in-person registration takes place where the registrar and deputy registrars are at the voting location to review the ID materials and the residency materials. So that online piece wouldn't be applicable necessarily on election day itself.
Any other questions at this time? Let's see, Representative Wood.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm wondering if for the work session, I know the Secretary of State is in the process of looking at voter registration systems. If the Secretary of State's office would be able to provide us with any more detailed information about how electronic signatures are transferred, because I'm sure it exists in the other 40 states on some level. And I just thought if we could get a little more specificity around that.
Sure, we can, I'm sure the Secretary Bellows will be with us for the work session, and we'll reach out to her just on recommendations for that.
Okay, thank you.
I think as written, it requires a signature, but it would be through rulemaking. So getting clarification would be helpful, I think, for members. Any other questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Ms. Du Bois.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Okay, let's see. Next up, we have Megan Sway, followed by Nicole Clegg and Riley McNeil. So welcome, Megan. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Senator Lucchini, Representative Caiazzo, honorable members of the committee, good morning. My name is Megan Sway, and I am Policy Director at the ACLU of Maine. Much of my testimony has already been covered today, so I will not repeat points except to say that the ACLU very much supports this bill from the perspective of the right to vote being sort of protective of all other rights. The right to vote is enshrined in more constitutional amendments than any other, and to the extent that this committee can look for ways to make access to the voting booth easier, we support that. And this is one way to do that. As you've heard from everybody else, and you know, so much of what we do these days is online. And so people are already ready to conduct their business online. The bill has many different ways to go through and make sure that everything is covered and there's rulemaking in place. And so in order to expand access to the ballot, we urge you all to vote ought to pass as amended on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sway. Representative Wood, did you have a question? Or is that previous? Okay. Any other questions from the committee at this time?
Thank you.
Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Okay, next up we have Nicole Clegg, followed by Riley McNeil. Welcome, Nicole.
Good morning, Senator Lucchini and Representative Caiazzo and members of the Joint Standing Committee on Veterans and Legal Affairs. My name is Nicole Clegg and I serve as the Senior Vice President of Public Affairs at Planned Parenthood of Northern New England. And we are pleased to submit testimony in support of LD 1126 this morning. I'm gonna follow Megan's lead and not repeat much of what you've already heard, but just to simply share that as an organization that's deeply committed to supporting our patients and the communities we serve, we traditionally provide a voter registration program year after year where we offer information in our health centers. We do in-person contact and outreach to underregistered populations on college campuses and at community events. And we have direct contact with people who we suspect are unregistered over the phone or through the mail and on the doors. And certainly our experience last year because of the pandemic highlighted just the structural inequities of Maine's current voter registration system and the opportunity to be able to provide online voter registration as an alternative for people who are really struggling to be able to do this in person or have access to the technology to be able to register to vote currently would be huge. It would make a big difference. So we are proud to support this legislation, and I will stop there, and I'm happy to certainly take any questions that people may have.
Great, thank you for your testimony. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you for coming and testifying today. Okay, next up we have Riley McNeil, followed by Sue Ellen Boardwell and William Sedlak. So welcome, Riley.
Thank you.
Welcome. Yeah.
Good morning, Senator Lucchini, Representative Caiazzo, and distinguished members of the Committee on Veterans and Legal Affairs. My name is Riley McNeil, and I am an intern with Homeless Voices for Justice. Homeless Voices for Justice is a grassroots organization organized by people who are or have experienced homelessness. We work for social change with and on behalf of people experiencing homelessness and poverty. We seek to empower people experiencing homelessness and poverty whose perspectives are often excluded from the development of policies through protests, education, positive policy change, and reform. I am here to testify in support of LD 1126, an act to update the voter registration process. Every year, Homeless Voices for Justice launches its You Don't Need a Home to Vote campaign. Since its inception, HVJ has registered over 25 homeless and low-income voters. As an intern in this program this year, I have become aware of all the barriers to voting when someone is experiencing homelessness. The constituents we worked with often had competing needs to be met. Some needed to find food or shelter for the night. One incident that comes to mind was waiting in line with a client for over an hour at City Hall. Their bag ended up ripping and they had to leave to get it fixed. All of their belongings were in that bag. Another example of a barrier to registering to vote when you are experiencing homelessness is not having a secure place to put important documents, such as a voter registration card. I believe that this bill would address some of those barriers. By having an online voter registration system, those interested in voting can quickly register to vote without having to worry about losing their voter registration card, and they don't have to wait outside for extended periods of time. And I believe that this bill would also support their privacy. If this bill were to pass, I envision how much easier it would be to support people wanting to participate in our state's democracy. As Homeless Voices for Justice, we believe everyone, regardless of socioeconomic status or housing status, has a right to having their voice heard and access to equitable voting processes. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from the committee at this time? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Sue Ellen Boardwell, followed by William Sedlak, and that completes the list of people who were registered prior to the hearing. If there's anyone else who has not had an opportunity to testify and wishes to in the attendees list, if you can raise your hand, we can give you the opportunity to speak. But with that, we'll turn it over to Sue Ellen Boardwell. Welcome.
Thank you, Senator Lucchini. Good morning, Senator Lucchini, Representative Chiazzo, and members of the Veterans and Legal Affairs Committee. My name is Sue Ellen Boardwell. I'm a resident of Yarmouth and here as a volunteer on behalf of the Maine Unitarian Universalist State Advocacy Committee. I'm testifying our support for LD 1126. And I have to say, as a person whose last name begins with B, it's been fun being called with my first name. So I got to hear everybody. So I apologize if things are a little bit repetitive, but MUSON is a faith network of Unitarian Universalists committed to electoral justice. Our faith calls us to promote, encourage, and protect justice and democracy. As Unitarian Universalists, our commitment to democracy is not just political or moral. It grows from our affirmation of the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Dignity grows from having a voice in matters that affect our lives. Dignity grows in an electoral process that understands the difference between equality and equity. Equality means that every eligible voter has the same basic right to register to vote. Equity means that every eligible voter has a meaningful opportunity to register to vote, despite different challenges resulting from work schedules or family responsibility, health issues, or transportation. As Unitarian Universalists, we promote compassion, the use of democratic processes, and know that the interdependent web of existence of which we are all a part cannot work unless it works for all. In addition to providing the opportunity to register to vote for all eligible voters, OVR honors the dedication of the staff and volunteers who work so tirelessly to ensure our safe, secure, and transparent electoral system. Online voter registration honors them by saving staff time, reducing errors, and can give them back critical time. OVR is about the people and the mechanisms that promote, protect, and grow our democracy. On behalf of MUSON, I urge you to support LD 1126 an act to update the voter registration process. Thank you very much for your time.
Great. Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from the committee at this point? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony today. Okay, next up we have William Sedlak, and William will be followed by Mary Callahan and Linda Dean. So welcome, William.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Senator Lucchini, Representative Chiazzo, and members of the Veterans and Legal Affairs Committee. My name is Will Sedlak, testifying in support of LD 1126 on behalf of both Maine Conservation Voters and Maine Conservation Alliance. Maine Conservation Alliance is here today as well as a member of the Mainers for Modern Elections Coalition, a strong proponent of online voter registration. Maine Conservation Voters protects Maine's environment and our democracy by influencing public policy, holding politicians accountable, and winning elections. Maine Conservation Alliance protects Maine's environment and our democracy through education, collaboration, and advocacy. We support measures that make voting more efficient, secure, and accessible for all eligible Maine voters. The OVR system outlined in this bill accomplishes all of those goals. We firmly believe that when all Maine people are fully integrated in both the democratic process and the clean energy economy, we will see all Mainers benefiting by owning businesses, being a part of the clean energy solutions available to our state, and working collectively to advance the values of community well-being and collaboration. Establishing an online voter registration system for Maine makes good sense for a few reasons, notably that it is more efficient, less expensive, and more accessible than our current system. You've heard about this already today. I wanted to clarify two items about this legislation. The first is that online voter registration is a technology upgrade that simply takes the process that occurs on a paper form and allows it to be transmitted via typed text and digital transfer. It does not change the back-end address verification mailers and has parallel deadlines with paper form registration. In short, it creates efficiencies and minimizes errors. I think a notable goal and a wonderful goal for all of us, which is a win for all Mainers. With regard to the signature collection that was brought up earlier, LD 1126 utilizes the digital signature transfer process that is already in statute in Maine due to upgrades that are underway for automatic voter registration at our BMV. This simply allows Mainers who do not have an ID to also use the digital system by submitting a high quality image. There's a high quality image of their signatures that will be transmitted to the clerk for verification. Just to summarize, Maine Conservation Voters and Maine Conservation Alliance strongly supports this bill, and we urge you to vote ought to pass. It is beyond time for Maine to join 40 other states in offering an online voter registration for its citizens. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Oh, we do actually have a question, it looks like, from Representative Corey. If he's there.
Yeah. Sure. How do we verify that it's a high quality image? I'm a graphic designer, design for a living when I'm not in the legislature. I've seen all kinds of scans and images and everything else done, God, over the last 20 years of my career. We specifying like what the DPI and the physical size of the signature is and everything else? Is it something that's going to be shot with people's cell phones and then submitted that way? I'm curious how it is that we actually verify that a high quality image is being transferred to the state.
It's a great question, Representative. I'm happy to follow up with more details for the work session on Friday on this to give you some more specifics.
Okay, that'd be great because you did say high quality image. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other questions this time? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony, Mr. Sedlak. Okay, next we have Mary Callahan, followed by Linda Dean. Welcome, Mary. Oh, and Mary, you're still on mute. Mary, if you can hear us, yeah.
Thank you.
Here you go.
Senator Lucchini, Representative Chiazzo, am I saying this right? Members of the committee and Veterans on Legal Affairs, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Mary Callahan, and I own Kimball Street Studios, a custom picture framing shop and gallery in Lewiston. I'm here today to testify in favor of LD 1126, an act to update the voter registration process. If you're asking yourself, why would I, as a small business owner, care about voting access? It's because I am on the board of LA Arts, and my gallery is a community-based business. In the middle of Lisbon Street in downtown Lewiston, we help to host the Art Walk for the Lewiston-Auburn area, a monthly event that celebrates the vitality of Lewiston and Auburn by turning the downtown into a bustling arts district. I've seen firsthand how community engagement both fosters community and helps small businesses like mine. And when artists and small business owners and community members can all contribute to our community, we're all better for it. The same is true when everyone is able to participate in our democracy. As a small business owner, I work long and often undeterminable hours. Since COVID, there are only 2 of us trying to cover store hours and appointments for the gallery and frame shop. I'm often the only person watching the store. If I have to leave the store to update my voter registration, that means I have to close, losing out on potential customers. With heavily reduced foot traffic, countless Main Street businesses like mine are already hanging on by a thread and cannot afford to turn away any potential customers. Online voter registration would allow me to update my registration from my store or from home. And I would not be forced to choose between running my business and participating in our democracy. I can't overstate the value of this convenience. Please vote yes on LD 1126, an act to update the voter registration process. Thank you for your time. Happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Testimony. Any questions from the committee at this time? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Linda Dean, and that will be the extent of our list unless there's anyone else in the attendees list. So welcome, Linda.
Thank you and good morning, Senator Lucchini and Representative Chiazzo and members of the Veterans and Legal Affairs Committee. My name is Linda Dean. I'm a resident of Livermore, and I'm here to testify in favor of LD 1126. I'm going to forego all the benefits of online registration because you heard that many times already today, and go right to a scenario to emphasize a point of the convenience of OVR. A 30-year-old woman named Anne gets married and needs to update her voter registration information before an upcoming election. Anne has recently been hired at the local manufacturing plant and is on a 180-day probationary period. She's working every day with only Sunday off because of scheduled overtime. Being on probation, Anne cannot complain or ask for time off for fear of a poor job performance review and being fired. Online voter registration would allow Maine workers like Anne, who have limited access to their town office, to register or update voter information without risking their jobs or losing hours. Maine citizens have the ability to renew their driver's license, register a car, pay property taxes, and get a hunting and fishing license online. And we need the ability to register to vote in this way also. Mainers should not have to use a vacation or sick day to exercise the right to register to vote. 40 states now have online voter registration, and I ask this committee to please give the citizens of Maine the option for online voter registration and vote to pass LD 1126. And seeing that I have a few minutes, I'd just like to add that something about the concern about signatures. During the pandemic, I refinanced my house, and all the paperwork except the final closing was done online with electronic signatures. I got to download all the paperwork afterwards with my signature on it so that I have copies of it. It looks like my signature. I don't know how they do it. To me, it's magic. I'm not a tech person, but I think that is one of the least things we need to worry about, getting that signature. Thank you. And that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Dean. Representative Tuttle.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I would agree with the last lady's testimony. Even our legislative bills, we're doing the same thing with signature for verification. And, you know, for somebody who isn't as computer literate as as I am not, I think it's working, and I'm sure it can be worked with seeing what's done in other states, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And, oh, great. Well, thank you for your testimony, Ms. Dean. Yeah. And that appears to be the end of the list for this bill. So with that, I'll close the public hearing on LD 1126. As Representative Tuttle said, we'll get the Secretary of State to come in and help out at the work session with, it sounds like, especially around the signature verification piece, which is a requirement, but how they're going to verify that, we can have her produce stuff for the work session. Okay, so the final bill on our list today is LD 1155, which is an act to require election transparency and audits. And that's presented by Representative Grohowski of Ellsworth. So welcome.
Thank you. It's always fun to be zipped into the the hearing and feel like, oh my God, did I just close the screen? But anyhow, I made it, and thank you for that. We call that beaming up in EUT. Good to see you all. Officially good afternoon. Senator Lucchini, Representative Chiazzo, and members of the Committee on Veterans and Legal Affairs. I am Nicole Grohowski. I represent the communities of Ellsworth and Trenton in the Maine House, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today in support of LD 1155, an act to require election transparency and audits. Public confidence in our elections is of the utmost importance and must be earned, not taken for granted. I personally have great confidence in the election process in Maine because I have worked full days at the polls, hand-counted ballots, observed recounts, and done a great deal of research into our systems in order to answer my own and my constituents' questions. We are very lucky here in Maine to have paper ballots and a robust chain of custody and security system for them. Our clerks and their staff take their work very seriously, and I am grateful to them for the long days and sometimes nights they put in to ensure our elections are successful. Not all citizens are as aware of how an election works, how they can get involved, and what to do if they have questions or concerns. It is important that the state provide easily accessible and understandable information to citizens who may hear conflicting information about our elections or wonder just how exactly we do things here in Maine compared to other states. It is also important that the state pilot and prepare for a longer-term post-election audit process. Routine audits of any system are important to ensuring that it works as designed, identifying places for improvement, and detecting abnormalities. I'm not suggesting that there is something concerning in particular to route out. I'm just a big believer in gathering baseline data and making iterative improvements to systems, and elections are no exception to that. Now I'd like to provide you a brief overview of the bill by section and why I believe each section is important. Section 1 of this bill has 3 components that are designed to improve citizen understanding of election procedures and the process for collecting and using public feedback about elections in Maine. First, it would require the Secretary of State to develop what might be called a Citizen's Guide to Election Procedures. Our elections are governed by a combination of statute, rulemaking, and instructions provided to local election officials by the Secretary of State. It can be challenging for average citizens to find and read this material, which could help answer many of the specific questions they have about election procedures. Citizens can be assured of the quality of our elections when they understand the procedures and see all rules being followed. And they can also help ensure election integrity by noting any compliance issues. Some citizens are interested in monitoring the different aspects of election management, but may be uncertain about when and where they can do so. This guide will be particularly useful to the hundreds of election workers who step up to help our elections run smoothly. the municipal officials who train them, and the organizations engaged in election observation activities. Second, it establishes a streamlined process to collect and record feedback during each election cycle. We envision a more structured customer service type process, building on the process which is already in place. During each election, the Secretary of State's office fields numerous calls from local election officials, election observers, and the general public, requesting assistance in resolving the sort of issues, real or perceived, that are inevitable in a complex undertaking like a statewide election. A structured sort of ticket system would make it easier to assign each issue to the best person positioned to assist, and would provide an invaluable record that can be used to identify ways to improve our elections procedures, whether through changes in statute, rule, or perhaps educational material supplied to local election officials and voters. Secretary Bellows has requested, and I support, an amendment to this provision to clarify that it is intended to capture data on questions and concerns that arise during an election, and that it does not require a full-fledged investigatory system at this time. I will work with her office and interested stakeholders to provide amendment language to the committee in advance of the work session. Third, it requires the Secretary of State to prepare a summary report of each election cycle. These summaries will likely be useful to several different constituencies. The Secretary of State might use the summaries to prioritize efforts to improve the election experience. Legislators might use the summaries to identify and address any gaps in statute. Local election officials might find it helpful to scan the summary of feedback collected through the ticket system about their own jurisdiction. Election security advocates might use the summaries to direct their election observation efforts, and candidates might use the recent history of recounts to inform a decision regarding a recount in their own race. So that was sort of section 1 of the bill. Section 2 would repeal a study resolve enacted by the previous legislature in favor of section 4 of this bill. Section 3 simply establishes a deadline for the first edition of the guide described in section 1. And section 4, another substantive section, begins the process of developing a robust post-election audit, but stops short of implementation because an audit of Maine's elections does need to reflect Maine election and recount laws and will require careful study and planning. This bill does require a pilot post-election audit after the 2022 general election. Later in this hearing, Mark Lindeman of Verified Voting will describe some of the resources available to guide this process. You should have also received testimony from Michelle Blum of the University of Melbourne and Vanessa Teague of Thinking Cybersecurity and the Australian National University, who have developed methods to extend post-election ballot audits to ranked choice contests. I'll provide just a quick overview of their testimony, since these data scientists can't be with us here today as it's the middle of the night in Australia, a country that has been using ranked choice voting for over a century. They have developed a method to determine the number of RCV ballots that need to be audited to limit risk based on how close a race is. They looked at Maine's first RCV election in 2018 and found that depending on the method used to compare the ballots to the scan results, that election could have been audited by hand counting either about 100 ballots or up to 2,600 ballots, depending on that method. And the method they developed has been successfully used in audits of 3 states, RCV primary races, Alaska, Wyoming, and Kansas. The academic research and experiences of other states can certainly inform our work, but the details will need to be adapted to reflect the realities of our own election ecosystem. The study and pilot in this bill will pave the way for Maine to develop an integrated program of audits and recounts to ensure the integrity of our election results. So in conclusion, I hope you will agree that this bill contains important measures to strengthen and protect our elections here in Maine. It asks the Secretary of State's office to complete additional tasks on a routine and year-round basis, and likely warrants an additional staff member with expertise in elections. This would be a relatively small but immensely critical investment to ensure election security and citizen understanding and confidence in this most fundamental process. Thank you for listening attentively to my testimony in support of LD 1155. I'd also like to thank the Nonpartisan League of Women Voters for helping with the details of this bill and organizing expert testimony and support, as well as Secretary Bellows and her staff for providing critical feedback on its provisions. And I would be happy to answer any questions you have at this time.
Thank you, Representative Grahowski. Representative Corey. Representative Corey, I'm sorry, you're still on mute.
Thank you, Representative Grahowski, for bringing this to you. I thought you disappeared, but you went to a different place on my screen. I love this bill. My only sort of concern, well, I have two concerns sort of right now. One is I love the bill so much, I hate the idea of a pilot program. I always feel like if a future legislature doesn't see the benefit of something, they can always get rid of it, you know, after the initial go. Would you be willing to get rid of a pilot program and just let the future legislatures decide whether or not it's a valuable exercise or not?
I think that's a great question, and I can totally understand, because of course we could just go forth with audits and then retract from that if we learned things from the first few that we didn't like. I think that the pilot, and I'll leave this to Secretary Bellows to maybe give her own feedback on, but I think it allows the Secretary of State's office perhaps to feel more like if it doesn't go as smoothly as they originally intended, or if there's it takes more manpower than they expected or less, that they aren't sort of locked into how they first designed it and they can improve it iteratively. I think they would do that anyhow, but I think the feeling of a pilot is that we really are embarking on something new and that it's worth gathering a lot of resources and input to make sure that we're doing it right. And my hope is that future legislatures would want to continue it. And I think the report that the committee would receive would provide any guidance around if there should be changes to statute to help the pilot, you know, to help a full-time regular audit process happen. So there could be some feedback there that's necessary as well for this committee. But I'm sort of torn on that regard too, because I think it's critically important, but I want the Secretary of State's office also feel comfortable with embarking on this new process.
That gets to my sort of second question a little bit, is that I always feel like a third party audit is more important than, or more constructive than, you know, an organization auditing itself. What's the thought behind having, you know, the group that runs elections audit how well they did running an election, as opposed to having a third party, you know, come in and audit how well that group ran the election?
I think that's a great question. And I know that in a number of other states that have audits, I think that they have, you know, an auditing personnel or section that does it. I think the really important part of the audit is that it be transparent so that any one of us can see how it works and what the results were. You know, as a person who's counted ballots, been to recounts, I don't need to be the actual person touching the ballots per se to know that what I see feels very trustworthy and safe. So I feel very confident that the office could do it in a transparent sort of method that could be duplicated. And I just am less aware of if there are, you know, regular operations that are third-party auditors of election results that we would want to utilize. And then that could bring a lot of questions too, as to who are they? Why are they doing it? Are they as transparent as we'd like? We maybe could be challenged by that, but I think that's a good question. And I hope you'll ask some of the other experts behind me as well, who probably have more data about the prevalence of that.
Thank you, Representative Corey. Any other questions for Representative Grahowski? All right, seeing none. Thank you, Representative, for your introduction to the bill.
Thank you.
I see Senator Lucchini is back, so I will gratefully turn the gavel back over.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we can begin the testimony portion with Secretary Bellows. And after Secretary Bellows, we'll go to Deborah McDonough and John Marion. Welcome, Secretary.
Thank you, Senator Lucchini, Representative Chiazzo, members of the Joint Standing Committee on Veterans and Legal Affairs. I am Secretary of State Shana Bellows, and I am here today to support LD 1155. 2020 was a year of unprecedented questioning nationally about the legitimacy of election processes and results. Much of the questioning arose from misinformation and active disinformation from nefarious outside actors. A critical public policy question in this moment is not only how do we respond to misinformation or disinformation, but also how do we increase transparency around our election systems and processes to strengthen public understanding of and confidence in our elections. We are fortunate in Maine that our elections are well run, accurate, and secure. Participation in Maine elections is extraordinarily high, well above national averages every year. In 2020, Maine's turnout for the presidential election was the third highest in the nation at more than 75%. We should be proud that Mainers are so engaged and involved in our elections. High participation is a reflection of confidence that Mainers enjoy in our election system. Post-election audit process would build upon our success here in Maine to further strengthen public confidence and assist election administrators in ongoing improvements to our elections. While post-election audits can be time-consuming and require adequate staffing resources, the benefits are significant, including increasing voter confidence and improving election systems and procedures over time. 34 states and DC require post-election audits. The first section of the bill would require the Elections Division to produce and disseminate annually a guide to elections procedures. We already produce significant materials for municipal clerks, and we could certainly publish a guide for the public. We think that might be useful in handling what is an increasing number of inquiries from members of the public over time. Section 1, subsection 2 would require instituting a new complaint process, and we really appreciate the sponsor's willingness to amend this section. We do have an informal complaint process. Our elections division fields numerous calls from the public, candidates, campaigns, and municipalities, and endeavors to resolve them with advice and technical assistance. Those complaints rarely rise to the level of an active violation of law. So we appreciate the clarification that this requirement would be for data collection for improvements to our systems and processes. There is a public policy question of whether the elections division should have more formal investigatory authority and the authority to resolve formal complaints, but that would require significant investment in staffing. Section 1, subsection 3 requires an annual report to the legislature, including a summary of complaints and resolution within 12 months of every election. And we respectfully request that this section be made effective for reporting beginning with the 2022 general election. We also recommend that the deadline for publishing a guide to elections procedures pursuant to section 3 of the bill be February of every election year to avoid confusion to the public. And then finally, the part of the bill, section 4, requires a pilot post-election audit. And to Representative Corey's question, we would certainly be willing and interested in implementing post-election audits statewide. It really is a question of staffing. We looked to the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, also under the supervisory authority of the Department of Secretary of State, where we do have an independent audit division. That is comprised of 5 staff. And so to set up an independent audit authority within the Division of Elections, we would want to make sure that there was adequate staffing to carry that out in a way that promotes security and integrity, in essence, to do this right. At its heart, this bill is about promoting ongoing election integrity and public confidence in our elections. It's not about what we're not doing. Maine elections are well run. It's about what we can do in the future to prevent problems before they occur. I look forward to working collaboratively with the sponsor and the committee on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Tuttle.
Yes, Secretary Bellows, the question is cost. I know we've talked about staffing at your departments, and I'm wondering for the work session, if we hadn't I think we need to know how much it's going to cost and how we're going to do that effectively. I imagine we can research what other states similar to Maine, it costs them, and we could compare, but I think it's a matter of cost. I just don't want to pass something that we can't do effectively.
Thank you, Representative Tuttle. We will prepare that information for the work session, and our staff has been in conversation with Colorado and Rhode Island, both of whom do some pretty thorough post-election auditing. And so we can work to prepare a fiscal note both for a pilot or for a broader program if the committee were interested in that.
Great, thanks. Representative Corey.
Thank you. I think that kind of goes then with my question about sort of having an independent, auditor, look at this, and, having a separate department within the Secretary of State's office that audits elections, might, fulfill, that idea of sort of independence. What does, scare me a little bit is that, if we were to go ahead and do that, and then we were to have a pilot program, and then we decided, that we weren't going to, go further, with that, how, do we fill, 2-year positions, or how would we do that with the option to, extend them in the future? Like I said, I think I agree with, you and the bill sponsor that, based on, some of, the questioning of the electoral, process, that this is very valuable bill and sort of very valuable things we should be looking at right now. But I do have a concern that, exactly, how do we staff independently, without creating a department, which I think would be valuable, anyways, do you care to sort of comment on that or elaborate on that a little bit?
I appreciate that thoughtfulness, and indeed the whole committee's thoughtfulness in terms of staffing and resources, because I think to do this well, to truly instill public confidence, it does need to be adequately resourced. And I think it would be possible if we wanted to put forward a pilot or a time limited project to do so and to make that clear in the staffing. At the same time, I will say that federal legislation that is being considered by Congress would direct states to go down this road. So this is definitely a trend that more and more states nationwide are engaged in post-election audits. And I suspect Representative Grochowski is at sort of the leading edge of the curve in bringing this forward, and that this might be something where we may end up deepening and investing the investment in post-election audits rather than doing it for 2 years and then abandoning it. That would be my hope.
Any further questions at this time? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony, Secretary Bellows. And we'll see you at the work session, I'm sure.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep, thanks. Okay, next up we have Deborah McDonough, followed by John Marion and Mark Lindeman. And if there's anybody else who wishes to testify in the attendees list, please raise your hand. So welcome, Deborah.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Deborah McDonough, and I'm a resident of Scarborough. I'm here as a volunteer with the League of Women Voters of Maine to testify in support of LD 1155. We would like to thank Representative Grochowski and Secretary Bellows for working with us on this important legislation. The stability of our democracy relies on the objective integrity of the election process, but as conflicts surrounding the 2020 election made clear, a stable democracy also requires public confidence that the reported outcomes are correct. The provisions in this bill address both of these issues. Maine has a history of well-run elections with numerous recounts supporting the results, but it would be naive to expect that this history can protect future elections. Ann Rappel, leading expert on election hardware, has said that all computer election systems can be hacked, but elections can also be compromised by inadvertent human error, either by election staff or the programmers who write the proprietary software. In response to chaos back in the Bush-Gore election, the National League conducted a study of election security, issuing a report which emphasizes a critical role for audits in modern elections. Section 4 of this bill calls for a pilot in the next general election, with the goal of developing protocols to audit every election moving forward. In 2018, the National Academy of Sciences released their own report on risks to American elections. And while they do recommend both enhanced security and also audits, they were surprised to conclude that the most significant threats that we face are active efforts to undermine the credibility of election results by both foreign and domestic actors. The provisions in Section 1 of this bill empower each of us to better understand and monitor our elections. My experience processing absentee ballots has allowed me to allay concerns expressed by friends, but it's taken me several years to absorb the details. With a citizen's guide and a system to collect and record observations, we build what amounts to a crowdsourced process audit, allowing election officials to efficiently address concerns in real time and also to identify those opportunities for improvement. In supporting this bill, we do not argue that elections in Maine have been compromised or that the persons responsible for our elections are dishonest. Instead, we argue that confidence in our elections shouldn't require trusting whomever happens to hold these positions, and confidence in our elections shouldn't require trusting the programmers at ES&S. Confidence in our elections can comfortably rest on informed citizen oversight and a robust post-election audit, providing a powerful counter-narrative to claims of tampering and fraud. We urge your support of LD 1155 and are available to answer questions as you consider this bill.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee at this time? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Quite welcome. Thank you.
Okay, next up we have John Marion, and he'll be followed again with Mark Lindeman. So welcome, John.
Thank you, Senator. Members of the committee, thank you for having me. My name is John Marion. I work for the good government group Common Cause in Rhode Island, but I work nationally on our election audit work. And I'm joining you from Providence, Rhode Island. My apologies for not submitting written testimony. I can follow up with the committee. I'm only speaking on the portion of the bill, LD 1155, about the pilot program for risk limiting audits. You're going to hear after me from Mark Lindeman from Verified Voting, who is one of the inventors of this method, and he is the technical expert. I'm just here to speak to our experience in the Ocean State with doing this. Like Maine, Rhode Island didn't conduct any type of post-election audit prior to 2016. We had a tabulation error, and it was a human error in 2016's election. And that led our legislature to enact legislation requiring risk limiting audits. As part of the legislative process, they decided to phase that implementation in, allowing pilots to occur in 2018 and requiring a statewide risk limiting audit beginning in 2020. And really that phase in, to speak to Representative Corey's issue, having pilots was actually a benefit in a couple of respects. The first respect was it got local election officials familiar with risk limiting audits. It allowed our Secretary of State and Board of Elections to send people to Colorado to witness risk limiting audits and get them familiar with the concepts, because there's a special terminology and so forth. And it also allowed us to adapt risk limiting audits to our voting system in Rhode Island. Every state has a different voting system. I'm aware that Maine's voting system is very locally based. You have ranked choice voting, as and you've heard, will require some adaptations for risk limiting audits. So having pilots are a good way to sort of ease into implementing risk limiting audits. And ultimately, you see in Rhode Island, we do them centrally in one location versus Colorado does them in a dispersed fashion in the county offices. And so Maine is going to have to make choices like that, and the pilots will help you make those choices. The last point I just want to make is that audits are fairly new, and there's a community of groups and individuals who are here to help implement, including Verified Voting, Common Cause, the Brennan Center, and you'd be welcome to come to Rhode Island and watch one of our audits the next time we conduct one. So I'll end there and happy to answer your questions.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Marion. Any questions? Representative Corey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for being here, Mr. Marion. So I think my concern with pilot programs was not so much sort of like the function of, you know, having sort of a slow rollout or something like that. I think that the question was more, you know, regarding would a future legislature, you know, continue with the program or not. I'm not sure how Rhode Island's, you know, law went into effect, if it started with a pilot program that then evolved, you know, into, you know, in actual, you know, statewide, you know, plan or not. Do you know if there was a pilot program that started off and then it ended and then the state legislature there needed to, you know, reconsider if they were going to continue with that program, or was it more that, you know, this was a law that was created with a pilot program in it?
Yeah, so so as the author of the bill, I can tell you I can answer this question, which was the original bill would have required them to start in 2018 statewide, but the State Board of Elections asked for an amendment, and we were happy to give it to them because they're responsible for implementing it. And in the amended bill that passed in 2017 allowed audits or pilot audits to begin in 2018 and required a mandatory statewide audit to begin with our presidential primary in 2020. And so ultimately we held a series of pilot audits in January 2019. And actually Mark and I helped write a report, Mark more than me, that detailed all the details, including time estimates and different methodological estimates based on those January 2019 pilots that helped the Board of Elections implement in 2020. So it was sort of a guide to implementation. And the idea was, you know, a risk limiting audit as they exist in Rhode Island and Colorado, you know, it can change the outcome of the election if it finds a problem. You know, it leads to a full hand recount. And so pilots, you conduct them on, you know, after the election's been certified, just to get familiar with the methods. But once a risk limiting audit is really conducted, you want to make sure you have your methods down because, you know, heaven help you get something wrong and you get stuck, or you have to conduct a full hand recount. That is a big undertaking.
So to my concern then, like, and what I'm hearing is that, you know, what we might want to consider is maybe a series of pilots that lead to, you know, implementation, you know, of a statewide program. So that's kind of what I'm hearing, or maybe I'm selectively hearing that and wanting to hear that.
Yeah. I mean, I think our approach and Colorado's approach was similar, where they phased it in, is a good approach, particularly given it just needs to adapt to the voting system, and in this case, ranked choice voting. And as you probably know, sitting on this committee, you know, don't start with the general election in 2024, right? That's the big one. Start with we started with our presidential preference primary in June 2020, and it was uncontested, right? The nominations were sewn up. So it was a good chance to ease into it without sort of the eyes of the world upon us as, you know, in that general election.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions at this time? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony, Mr. Marion.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Mark Lindeman. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Mark Lindeman. I'm acting co-director of Verified Voting, a national nonprofit organization whose mission is to strengthen democracy for all voters by promoting the responsible use of technology in elections. And as you will have surmised, I'm here to talk about risk limiting audits. I'll try to keep my comments as short as possible and get into some of this nitty gritty. As Deb McDonough alluded to, it's become increasingly clear that both US election systems and public confidence in elections themselves are under attack. And risk limiting audits are becoming increasingly appealing as one means of addressing both these concerns. Risk limiting audits have been tested or implemented in at least 11 states so far, including 3 states that conducted official risk limiting audits of the 2020 presidential election, and many other states are considering them. So I've been honored to provide technical assistance to many dozens of state and local officials in 6 of those states, including Rhode Island, Virginia, and Pennsylvania. And by the way, Deb McDonough attended the first Rhode Island pilots, so she's really been very involved in this community. The comment I hear most often from election officials is, that was easier than I expected. Probably number 2 is, I'm glad to be able to tell my voters that we did this to check our counts. And number 3 is, going through that process gave me ideas about how to improve some of my other election procedures. So when audits are appropriately tailored to state and local circumstances, election officials generally embrace the process. And indeed, these audits are highly adaptable. They can be implemented in various ways, and they've succeeded in jurisdictions with a wide variety of voting technology and procedural differences, including ranked choice voting. So in our experience, a process of collaborative planning involving state and local election officials, along with people who are deeply familiar with how risk limiting audits can be adapted, really leads to the best outcomes. And that's a good trajectory. In my experience, states have been able to conduct successful pilots relying primarily on full-time staff, sometimes with short-term part-time assistance. And beginning that way will equip Maine to determine how best to proceed and what resources will be needed going forward to assure success in future statewide audits. So Representative Corey, just off the top of my head, my thought is if the legislature wants to put Maine firmly on a path to mandatory audits, I think you can do that. I think you'll want to be very careful not to over-prescribe details about which we can make, people in the state of Maine can make clearer recommendations after some experience under your belts. So we applaud this legislation. We urge its approval. I have deep family roots in Maine myself, so I would love to even be able to come and help in person once that's more possible. And as John Marion alluded, there are wonderful partners all around who also can help. And that concludes my testimony.
Great, thank you. Representative Corey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just want to clarify that under Maine law, we have the ability, if we do go and do a law like this, we have the ability to make it so that, we have rulemaking process that can, go forward, and whether, that rulemaking involves legislative review or just routine technical, review, meaning, by, the group of people that determine how they create that audit. I think we have the ability to, be prescriptive or not prescriptive in what that looks like. I think that the right trick is, to try to keep the law fairly broad enough that we can, allow them to, sort of create that on their own. I don't know if they had that ability within Rhode Island's law or not, but here everything doesn't have to, be perfect. When we get it out there, we often have a chance to, take another, bite of the apple, whether or not those rules come back to us, or, those rules go through a process with the public at large.
Yes, Mr. Marion wrote a very good flexible bill for Rhode Island, so it had that freedom. Just to call out with relation to staffing, it may be that after some pilots, it will be clearer, how you want to go forward with audits, and it will then be clearer what staffing helps to support that in particular.
Any other questions at this time? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony, Mr. Lindeman.
Thank you, and thanks for your patience.
Sure, great, thank you. Okay, I believe that we are at the end of our list of registrants for this bill. So at this time I will, oh, sorry, Patty Du Bois. My fault. Sorry, Patty.
That's okay. I'm not offended in any way.
Were you in the meeting the whole time? I didn't see you on the list. My fault. Sorry.
No, that's fine. No worries.
Yeah.
No worries. So again, Senator Lucchini, Representative Piazza, and members of the Veteran and Legal Affairs Committee, I'm Patty Du Bois. I represent the Maine Towns and City Clerks Association, and we are neither for nor against this legislation, and we thank you for the opportunity to share our thoughts. There are several sections to this bill. Section 1 talks about transparency of election procedures, and municipal clerks support the production and dissemination of information regarding election procedures by the Secretary of State's office. It's always helpful to get more information out to the voters. Section 2 regarding election complaints. Overall, municipal clerks are opposed to this section and feel that there's currently a system in place which effectively manages election complaints. This bill appears to encourage voters to complain directly to the Secretary of State's office with complaints that could be easily managed at the local level. Clerks acknowledged, however, that it would be helpful to have a summary of serious complaints after each election from the Secretary of State's office. Section 3, the election report. Since these requirements fall to the Secretary of State's office, clerks really aren't impacted by these provisions. But again, we would welcome the information summary regarding recounts and problems that are identified during those recounts. And there's been a lot of discussion about the post-election audits, and the pilot would show complexities to this process, obstacles that may be uncovered, required staffing levels, and would allow us to kind of ease into that process. So I would support the concept of audits being done in a pilot situation before they're implemented. Then we questioned, whether that would be all municipalities that would have to audit after an election, or whether there would be a random sampling that would take place. So that's somewhat unclear. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you, Ms. Du Bois. And sorry again, I was looking at the wrong list for you. Questions from the committee at this time? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Yep. Okay, I believe that is all moment for this bill. So with that, I will close the public hearing on LD 1155. And it appears that is the end of our list of bills for today. So I guess, yeah, we're back in on Wednesday at 10. It looks like we have a number of hearings, a lot of public hearings Wednesday at 10. So it could be a longer session. So any questions or anything before we adjourn? Seeing none. Thanks everybody for being here today. And with that, we'll adjourn for the day. So, thanks.